Good evening and welcome to the Township of Lopatcong Planning Board meeting of June 2002. Sorry about that. At this time, I'd like to invite you to join us in a silent moment of prayer followed immediately. Please, when we have silence. At this time, I invite you to join us in a silent moment of prayer, followed immediately by the oath of allegiance of the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'm required to state that this meeting has been provided indicating, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided indicating the time and place of the meeting in accordance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975 by advertising a notice in the Star Ledger and the Express Times and by posting a copy on the bulletin board in the municipal building. Beth, may we have a roll call, please?
Members Clymer, Coyle.
Here.
Leo. Here. Polito.
Here.
Saginaw.
Here.
Weeks.
Here.
Mayor Menducci.
Here.
Vice Chairman Sampson.
Here.
Chairman Bentley.
Here. We'll be moving on to old business, the first order of which is, has everyone on board received a copy of the minutes of the April 27th, 2022, and the May 17th, 2022, and May 25th, 22 minutes. Do you have any questions, comments?
Staying, I think I want to.
Okay. This time I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any noes? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
For all meetings or which one?
I don't remember exactly which one it was. Obviously, I wasn't here for one.
Okay.
All right, but I read up on it.
In that case, the minutes will stand as published. If you don't have, well, with the abstention, you won't have any questions on it anyway, so. Okay, the first order of business is, well, we'll combine the two. We have Jessamine Minor Subdivision, Block 65, Lot 501. This is a minor subdivision hearing. And we have also Jessamine Minor Subdivision on Lot 65, Block 65, Lot 3, just a hearing, okay. Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Good evening. Ryan Dornish on behalf of Mr. Jessamine, and I have with me Mr. Schreider, and I have Mr. Textoris, who are the professionals who drew the plans to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
Okay. You need to swear them in?
Are you putting him on as the first witness?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
You ready?
Mr. Schreider?
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Why don't you stand and raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you'll give tonight will be the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Thank you.
So, Mr. Schreider, we're here for two subdivisions, for Lot 3 and Lot 5. You drew the plans on both of those properties, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the last time I was here at the board meeting, the board had a question as to, on Lot 5, why we were replacing a home on a lot that was under 9,000 square feet. But I believe you rectified that in your plans, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. So now you have a conforming lot on your plans?
conforming lot.
Okay, thank you. So that was the board's question from last time. Does the board have any additional questions for Mr. Schreider?
Only procedural thing, would you state his qualifications
Sure.
for which position he's
Okay, so Mr. Schreider, what are your qualifications?
I'm a professional licensed land surveyor in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Been working in Warren County for almost 40 years.
Do you have a license number?
My New Jersey license is 28527. Pennsylvania license 31430.
Thank you, that was for the record, okay?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so does the board have any questions for Mr. Schreider in addition to what he's testified to?
I'll defer to Adam. Do you have anything that you want to go with him? There was some questions.
Sure. For Mr. Schreider, I'm assuming you had a chance to review my report, technical report on the subdivision plan. And we don't have to go point by point, but, there are just some, I had, let's say, 1, 2, 5, 6, 7 minor kind of plan cleanup comments. If you had a chance to review those, do you have any problems or objections or questions to any of those, addressing them?
Are we looking at both plans?
Well, I guess right now we're looking at the plan for Lot 5.
Okay, lot 5. No, I met everything, I'm pretty sure. Did you review the last one?
The last revised plan that I received was dated, revised through May 4th, 2022. So on that plan, we had a few minor revisions and corrections, just to some dimensions and some of the zoning tables that are shown on the plan.
Right.
So we'll have to take care of those before the plans are recorded. Okay.
I took care of those, yeah, all right.
Okay.
Okay, and on the other plan, the only thing that I didn't do was, I believe you wanted the setbacks from the center of the alley instead of from the edge of the right-of-way, because these alleys are only vacated, they're
Right.
not abandoned.
Right.
And I normally took the setback from the right-of-way line instead of the center line of the vacated alley, so you
Okay.
wanted it from the center line, so I have to adjust that.
That would be the only, yeah, I
The rear
mean,
building setback.
Right.
And I think that was the only thing on that plan that had to be revised.
okay. Yeah, so we can review those, board approves the applications, we can review those as part of final review before recording them. That's all I had.
George?
Yeah, I have a few comments. First of all, on Lot 5, the applicant has gone back and revised the subdivision plan so that it now requires no variances. He's eliminated the need for a variance for lot area, lot width, frontage. They're completely conforming lots. So those have been taken care of on Lot 5. There's only several minor questions on Lot 5 that I had. Most of them I call administrative. It's just getting some of the numbering to match up between the grading plan and the survey documents. Very minor, it can be taken care of as a condition of approval. The only thing I would ask is that the site plan be looked at. It's a very minor detail, but there's no sidewalk shown connecting the driveway to the front of the house. I mean, it's only a very small piece and it deals with the grading plan, but I do think you ought to put a sidewalk in to get from your, basically the driveway of the home to the front entrance of the dwelling, and then just adjust the calculations for lot coverage. But other than that, I think the plans are fine. They provided the appropriate number of street trees. So I believe this is, with the minor suggestions of making those minor corrections, I think it's ready to go and could be approved subject to the applicant making those minor adjustments to the plan. Or lot, I don't know, are we covering both lots?
Yes.
Chairman? On Lot 3, I would also say that the subdivision plan submitted for Lot 3 is a complying plan. It requires no variances to the proposed subdivision. In terms of comments, I had minor administrative comments, making sure that the grading plan and subdivision match as to lot numbering, impervious cover, that type of thing. The only items that I had, though, is that based on the street frontage involved, the newly proposed Lot 3 will require several additional street trees to comply with the town ordinance. And I would appreciate it if the applicant would provide those on the plan. And also, there was one question on the grading plan that when you looked at the grades established for what appears to be an entrance to the basement area of the home, there appears to be an error that should be looked at there in terms of the height of that opening. It indicates a door, but the door would only be 2 or 3 feet high based on what's shown on the plan. And I think it's just a minor change that can be addressed. But other than that, that plan is also in good shape, and I think all the changes can be made administratively and be a condition of approval.
Go ahead, George.
Any other questions for Mr. Schreider?
Does any of the board members have questions for Mr. Schreider?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are we putting the trees out at the curbing, or are we putting the trees in the people's lots? They don't call them street trees.
Well, they are street trees. They're
That's
required
what I-
as
is that
street
what we
trees.
want, or
Well, in this case, it
does it become
appears,
the town's responsibility to maintain?
well, they can be
The
set,
homeowner's
as far as I'm
responsibility?
concerned, it's the number of trees that's required. They can be set 1 foot inside their property line if that's an issue.
Something got addressed.
But that's the intent, was to meet the township's requirement for street trees. So they could be spaced the same and just set 1 foot inside the property line.
I'm okay with that, I just, there's no, it makes a difference who takes care of what.
Yeah,
Okay, so
understood.
it's something that needs to be addressed here, so we can tell them what plan.
Well, that's fine, as a
You want to do
condition.
that, there's some.
Well, it's unclear in the ordinance. All I said is the requirement is for street trees, because that's what they have to provide.
Right.
If it's the concern of the board and the policy of the board, I see no reason why they couldn't be planted 1 foot inside the property, so it wouldn't be the responsibility of the town, but the same space.
Right.
Okay,
So they're currently proposed within the right of way, so
yes.
outside of their property.
Right. so
Currently.
become more.
Yes.
That's what I'm asking, if that's something I'd like to make it, ask them back.
Okay. And that could be something that the board requests and the plans will
That's
be
fine.
revised.
So 1 foot in from the right of way.
Correct.
Okay.
Any further questions from the board? If not, I'll open it up to the public.
We also have Mr. Texturis here, if anybody wanted to hear from him who did the grading.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Well, no, we have the one witness, already through with this witness now.
Yes, we're through with that witness,
Okay.
provided there are no more questions from the board for him.
We'll open it up and we'll have
Mr.
questions.
Texturis?
Well, we're gonna,
Hold on.
we're gonna
Okay,
open it up
sure.
to the public
That's fine,
for
sure.
questions. In the event there are any questions for the survey.
Questions for this witness only, and they have to be pertinent to his testimony this evening. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask any questions of this witness? Seeing none, the public portion is closed. Please proceed.
Thank you.
Next witness.
Mr. Texturis, can you please state your full name for the record?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Michael Textoris, Textores. I'm a professional engineer, planner, and certified municipal engineer, licensed with the state of New Jersey. I'm employed by Van Cleef Engineering Associates. I've been practicing civil engineering for approximately 40 years, and I've been testifying in front of numerous boards, planning and zoning boards, over the past 35 years. And I've been accepted as a witness in land, civil engineering, land planning, and things of that nature. So, and I have testified in front of this board.
Please identify.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Pardon?
You want me to swear?
Yes.
Mr. Textoris, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give here this evening will be the truth and the whole truth, so help you God?
I do.
Carry on.
Okay, so Mr. Texturis, you heard some of the questions from the board, from Mr. Schreider, and you heard some of the comments. There was a question last time I was here before the board about a home can't be on a lot under 9,000 square feet. And I understand that you also corrected your plan in
Yeah.
that regard, is that correct?
Yes, the plan in front of you is the one that is in your package that was submitted as part of the application. It's the plot grading and soil erosion plan and sediment control. Last revised May 4th, 2022. The plan has basically been highlighted. The dark areas shows the area of lot 5, and then there's 2 red lines. The dashed red line towards the center of the lot is where the original lot line was proposed. The dark line, or the heavier red line, that's where the property line is now proposed. So as stated, both lots now conform to the zone. Mr. Ritter stated, and it's correct, there are some bulk variances required as part of the existing house, but those variances exist today, and they're not going to be intensified as part of this application. As far as the review letters, we received 2 review letters, May 17th, 2022, prepared by Mr. Ritter, your town planner, and we also received a letter from Collier Engineering. That was Paul Sturbins, that was dated May 22nd, 2022. As far as Mr. Ritter's letter, we intend to comply with all the items contained in his letter. Regarding Mr. Sturbins' letter, we intend to comply with all the items with the exception of technical comment number 5, which requests that the applicant either install or request a waiver for the installation of sidewalks. I've been out to the site numerous times, and I can testify that there's no sidewalks located in the vicinity of this lot. So there's no sidewalks to the north, none to the south, and none across the street to the west. So we're asking for a waiver from supplying the sidewalk. There was also a suggestion with regard to curb, but curbing exists out there, and it obviously is going to remain, so.
So the request is just for the sidewalk?
Yes,
The sidewalk.
just for sidewalk. And the other,
There's also a question from the board about the basement entrance. Did you hear?
yeah, we'll look into that. All the proposed dwellings are gonna have basements. I'm not sure all of them are gonna access to the basement. Some of them might have stairs and Bilko doors, but I'll work that out with Lenny and I'll detail the plans accordingly.
The 2 of them had basements,
Right,
walkouts,
right,
and the other one I might put walk out and put steps down.
okay. The only other, there was another issue in Paul Sturbin's letter regarding Lot 5. There was a vacated right-of-way located along the easterly property line. The right-of-way, or I should say the alleyway, was vacated, but the rights to install utilities still exist. So Paul requested that we approach the town council and vacate the utility rights that remain as part of those vacated alleys, and we agreed to do that as part of the application. Now, that's nothing the board can discuss, that's something we have to take up with the council.
Tyler, any questions?
No, I think Mr. Tixoris covered everything that we had commented on.
George?
No further questions, he's covered everything in my letter, and what
Okay.
the applicant appears to agree to all the conditions, so it's fine.
Any member of the board have any questions of this gentleman? Seeing none, I will, yes, I'm sorry.
In terms of, thanks, Al. In terms of number 5 in Mr. Sturbinson's letter, is
Yeah.
there, I'm trying to, I don't have the letter in front of me, so for my knowledge, is there something in the vicinity on 3rd Street? Or what do you consider the original intent of having such a sidewalk installed?
You mean along the frontage of the property?
Yeah, is there something else in other lots, east or west of it, that would hook up, so to speak?
I didn't see any, you know, obviously we're involved with Lot 3 as well, and I did not see any sidewalk in this area at all. So, I mean, obviously, if there was sidewalk on either side of us, maybe some sidewalk across the street, we would comply.
But down the street?
I didn't see any.
Okay, I'm just trying to get the intent of Mr. Sturman.
Yeah, the current primitive neighborhood is that they don't have sidewalks.
Okay,
Yeah, I think the nearest sidewalk is up on Deadwood Street.
yeah, that's what I'm.
Block.
Yeah, and I can speak to the comment that we put in, just for the benefit of everyone. The ordinance itself has a requirement that, you know, when you have a minor subdivision or a land development application, that sidewalks and curbs be installed and other street improvements. But typically, those are required on new subdivisions when you have a new, you know, a larger multi-unit subdivision that's being constructed, that subdivision throughout would have sidewalks installed and then connect to other existing sidewalk networks. This is an existing neighborhood that's been in town for many, many years, and there are no sidewalks. Like, there's no network existing. So as Mr. Textoris explained, if there was something that they would connect to, maybe that this lot never had, they would add them in. But there's nothing really to tie into here. So that's sort of a formality, but we're covering it just so we're covering, you know, all the rules on the books and indicating that that should be waived by the board in this case.
And I guess before you're completely done, there was a comment from the board about some additional street trees as well.
Yeah, I'm moving on to Lot 3 now. Again, this is the map that was submitted as part of the application. Most recently revised on May 4th, 2022. Again, this shows the perimeter of the lot in dark black, and the red line in the middle is the subdivision line that we're proposing. Both lots conform to the zone. This is a R75 zone, 9,000 square foot minimum. Both lots conform to the lot width requirements. And currently on this site, Mr. Jessamine is now currently constructing the house on the remaining, we'll call it the remaining lanes of Lot 3, which is the lot further to the north. We got a building permit for that, so he's already constructing that house. As far as the review letters we've received, again, May 17, 2022 letter prepared by your township planner, Mr. Ritter, and then again, the May 22nd letter prepared by Paul Sturbins, the town engineer. Again, with regard to Mr. Ritter's letter, we intend to comply with all the comments contained in his letter. The one comment he did bring up earlier, we proposed 4 street trees along 3rd Street. His suggestion, or he was requesting an additional 3 trees along Dana Street, which we agreed to do. We agreed to comply with his request. I think most of the other items in his letter were technical, and we agreed to address them. Again, with regards to Mr. Sturbin's letter, again, we're requesting a waiver for the installation of sidewalks for the same reason we requested the waiver for Lot 5. Mr. Sturbins also mentioned in his letter that he wanted to place in a resolution that any utility connections or driveway accesses associated with both of these lots would be off of 3rd Street. There will be no access or no utility connections on Dana Street. Mr. Sturbin said that this road was previously overlaid, and he would not allow any disturbances in that area. So, again, that was in the review letter, and we agreed to comply with that condition.
So, I'm gonna go back there because it affects the town. I wanna know, are we changing all the street trees to where they're not street trees anymore? Are we gonna bring all this, the whole development into
These
that
two
one
lots.
foot in? Yes. Are we gonna change them, or are we gonna leave them out in the?
I think they'll still be functionally street trees, but they'll be within or outside of the town right away.
That's what I'm looking.
They'll be,
that's what I'd like to go with.
you know, planted on the lot rather than within the
So
road.
they're not your, the
As
town's
long as he understands and they understand, that's all. Because I interpreted a little different just now, after what was said the second time. street trees there, but we came up with first on property, so we're gonna get the right of way street trees. Yeah, we got to work with 7 trees.
I'm gonna put silver tree
Or
there.
1 or 2. Well, you gotta put.
Those trees were installed to be in conformance with the ordinance as far as caliper and timing. I think outside of that, I think, this is our second go-around, so we addressed a lot of the comments that were in the original letters, so there's not a whole lot to discuss with regards to the 2 review letters.
So for the old trees,
They have.
besides the right one?
Right.
Okay.
So that'll be,
Put the right of way off.
Yes, okay.
Okay,
One foot off the right of way.
you do have the option here because, you don't have sidewalks,
Got it, Dale.
but, it's, we'll put them wherever you want.
There's a town easement that goes through there.
Okay,
It's usually like making it not so exact, but 40 inches in or give or take, even more than that. So whatever right of way is maintainable at whatever level.
okay. When I submit the revised plans, I'll specify exactly where the trees are, and if it's not to the liking to the township, we'll modify it.
Any other questions of this gentleman from the council? None? In that case, I will again open it up to the public to any questions of this witness. Seeing none, we'll close the public portion and proceed with your presentation.
Okay. Since the experts gave their testimony, I would just like to request of the board that you approve with final approval to Lot 5 and final approval to Lot 3 so that Mr. Jessamine can carry on with his project.
So that completes your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I think the first order would be to vote on a waiver of the eliminating the sidewalks.
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to grant the waiver of eliminating the sidewalks on these 2 lots.
I'll make a motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Beth, roll call, please.
Yes. Members Coyle,
Yes.
DeLeo, Polito,
Yes.
Sazanaw,
Yes.
Weeks.
Yes.
Mayor Manfucci.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Sampson,
Yes.
Chairman Denton.
Yes. And we'll move on to entertain another motion granting minor subdivisions to Mr. Jessamine on both lots, subject to all of the conditions that will be contained in the resolution that will be coming forth codifying this. And, do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Beth, again, roll call vote.
Members Coyle,
Yes.
DeLeo,
Yes.
Polito,
Yes.
Sazanaw,
Yes.
Weeks.
Yes.
Mayor Manfucci.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Sampson,
Yes.
Chairman Denton.
Yes. I believe that will complete your application. You have your subdivisions.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
You? Out of here. Flipped it.
flipped it out.
He's asking if he can put evergreen trees as these trees.
I would,
3 trees, typically 3 shade trees.
They have to be shade trees.
All right.
This is it.
Ordinance that addresses it, right?
Yeah, there's no-
Yeah.
There's an ordinance.
243, 46C.
Yes.
Well done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Right. It's in the ordinance, it's on their plans, so.
Yeah.
So I,
all right, moving on, we're going to go continue the preliminary major site plan application. Identify Real Estate LLC.
Take care, good seeing you.
We're switching professionals.
Yeah, I think we'll.
Musical
Let the
chairs up
excited
here.
side.
I'm out of here.
Not way too long. Good night, Adam.
Thank you.
Charity, huh? That didn't help. There we go. Better.
Okay, I'll start over. This is the applicant for NFI Real Estate LLC, for preliminary major site plan application with bulk variance relief, 188 Strikers Road, Block 99, lots 3.01 and number 6. This is the continuation of a hearing we've been going on for quite a while.
A little bit. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board. For the record, my name is Mark Peck. I'm an attorney with the Florio Perucci Law Firm here on behalf of the applicant, NFI Real Estate LLC. And as the chairman indicated, we're here to continue our hearing. We were last here May 17. As you'll recall, over the course of this application, we have amended it, and now we're only seeking preliminary major site plan approval along with bulk variance relief to construct a 563,950 square foot warehouse, which will include 17,500 square feet of office space, along with some associated improvements at Block 99, Lot 3.01, which is 188 Strikers Road. That's a landlocked 46.75 acre parcel in the ROM zone district where this is a permitted use. Access to the site will be across Lot 2 and Block 99. The bulk variance relief we're seeking consists of 3 variances, 2 of which are unavoidable consequences of the lot's landlocked status. These variances are for deviations from section 243-63D. That ordinance requires lot frontage on a public street, which this lot lacks. Also from section 243-75E, where the ordinance requires 300 feet of street frontage, which again, this lot lacks. And finally, from section 243-75D2, which has to do with a 25-foot landscape buffer on all non-street lot lines. We have some landscape gaps, in particular, just a little dog leg where lot 6 intersects with lot 3.01, and more extensively on the railroad side of the lot, the northerly side of the lot. But the reason for that, of course, is so we could give more buffering to the overlook neighborhood. We could pull back and give the railroad more buffering, but we thought we wanted to give overlook more. We're also seeking a couple of design waivers, more than a couple, 3, from section 243-46C1B, which requires a maximum 40-foot width for driveway aprons. Ours is proposed to be 143.7 feet. From section 243-48B, 6A and B, which concerns 30-foot minimum fire aisles. We're proposing 24-foot with some employee parking adjacent to the front facade of the building. And then finally from 243-46E2C, which has to do with pipe velocity in the sewers. And of course, any other variances or waivers that are identified in the course of this hearing. So at our previous hearings, we presented testimony from NFI's Chief Development Officer, Michael Landsberg, site engineer Kyle McKenna, traffic engineer John Wichner, and our planner, Andrew Janu. Tonight, we're going to present some brief testimony from Mr. Landsberg, just in response to some questions that were left hanging. As you'll recall, they asked for 2 minutes at the end of the hearing for that, so we're going to get that on first. But then we'll present John Wichner, who will provide some updated traffic testimony, and then we'll wrap it up with Mr. Janu's colleague, planner Barbara Elin. Mr. McKenna is here in case any site engineering questions arise, but except as we've otherwise testified to, we agree to work with Suburban so we can comply with the contents of their review letter. So without any further, I'd like to call up Mr. Landsberg, who was sworn again last month. So.
Good evening.
Good evening, Michael. At the last hearing, there were questions about whether the building would have windows, particularly the elevation that would face the overlook neighborhood. Can you provide some information on that?
Sure, and if I can I put the site plan up that we previously had? I don't remember which.
I forget, I know we ended at 814, but I'm not sure what that was.
So I think, so that everyone can see here, I think the question was really on this facade facing the overlook neighborhood. And we have modified this facade as we testified in the last hearing with a slight angled corner here and then a flat. And I think the question was around the high bay windows, frequently referred to as clerestory windows. If they're up high and the warehouse lights are on 24 hours, would the residents see that at night? And we have no intention to put those high bay windows on this facade. There would be potentially some glass lower where, office space would be, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 feet or so high, at the entrance here, but it wouldn't be at the higher elevation so that that light goes out when the lights are on at night in the warehouse.
So we are proposing a berm of 10 to 12 feet, correct, on that side as well? So if there's windows at 10 or 12-foot elevation, they should be blocked by the berm and other landscaping anyway, correct?
Correct. It's actually about a 16-foot differential from pavement elevation here to the top of berm. This is elevation roughly 364, and top of berm here is roughly 380.
Another question that came up had to do with the HVAC mechanicals and whether they would be located on the roof, and if they were, and if they would be visible, would NFI entertain a parapet roof?
So the mechanical design hasn't been completed yet, so we're not certain if they will be located on the roof or not. But if they are located on the roof, yes, we would be willing to put up a parapet wall, a screen wall, something to shield them.
Okay, very good. And then the last question that we have for you from the last meeting had to do with sound attenuation, and if there was anything that could be done, particularly between the building and the overlook neighborhood. Have you given any consideration to that?
We did, and we looked at it, and I think there was a fair amount of discussion of this area. Previous plan, we had a smaller buffer here. It kind of narrowed out. This is about 125 feet or so, and it kind of narrowed on this side, but we have since agreed to keep that consistent all the way across. There is this buffer, or the berm, I should say, is a little bit lower here, so it starts at elevation 371, and through the topography kind of goes up to 380. And here in the comments from, I believe, the attorney for some of the folks in Overlook, and with this being the closest spot, there was a question of some screen wall or a sound wall or so forth, and we took a look at it, and we are willing to do that. Kyle, if maybe I can grab the exhibit, and I have some pass out to the board as well. So it was a fair comment, and we took a look at that and saw, look, we understand the dynamic here, and we're trying to be as responsive and understanding as we can, recognizing that there are two different zones here adjacent to each other. And so what we did was, especially in this area closest to these two buildings in the Overlook complex, we looked at a sound attenuation screen wall, we'll call it, roughly that is 14 feet high. That with the elevation, this sits 2 feet lower, so provides a total of roughly 16 feet of screening. You'd have the sound wall kind of behind the berm. So from this view, you would see, berm with heavy landscaping, then a screen wall, and then the building. This gets consistent to elevation 380 across, so a consistent kind of 16-foot differential. Just for perspective, we looked at elevations of the buildings, and the nearest one is the finished floor elevation is 362. We were saying the second floor elevation is roughly 15 foot higher, 377. So 380, that gives you just a perspective. If we're at elevation 380, it would be above where the second floor is in this building closest to it.
Mr. Lansberg, can you, I don't think that exhibit has been marked yet. Can you mark that
We
exhibit?
have to mark that as A15.
A15?
A15. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Sorry, I mentioned that to Mark beforehand, and thank you for reminding us. So that's how we looked at it. I think there was some commentary around, a concrete block wall or something similar along the top of the berm here. We felt like, practically speaking, that's a little bit more complicated, and you would lose the landscaping on top of the berm through the construction. And so we thought the approach of having that 16-foot screen, total screen wall plus the landscaping in front, provides a little bit more buffering to that adjacent building or buildings of the overlook community.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our direct questioning of Mr. Landsberg. If the board has any questions?
I have a question. So you're gonna build like a kind of sound wall on top of the berm so that they, to block the view of that? Is that what we're talking about?
We're not going to do it on top of the berm, because if we did it on top of the berm, functionally, or practically speaking, you would lose a lot of landscaping for the screen wall construction. So what we looked at was, in order to get 16 feet, we were trying to look at 16 feet as a good screen wall. You're above, a truck is 13 and a half feet. And so that's kind of how we were looking to get above that and with some cushion. And so you could look at either doing, say, an 8-foot or so wall, 8 or 9 feet on top of the berm, but then you would lose a lot of landscaping. So we looked at doing a longer wall that was 14 feet high, plus you have 2 feet of elevation change. So it gets you that 16 feet of coverage. And then you'd still have the berm with all heavy landscaping in front of it.
So what would the top elevation of the wall be?
So the top elevation of the wall would be 380 to this red line would be 380, and then the berm over here, because of topography, this starts roughly 380. So you'd have a consistent 380 all the way across. And again, the elevation of that building closest to the property, the finished floor, is 362.
What's the material of the wall going to consist of?
Typically, it's a sound attenuation material. It's not we wouldn't want it to be like a concrete block wall like you might see on the highway. They're typically panels. They can be, it's generally an off-white color, and it's I don't know if it's metal. But it's an absorbing sound absorbing material. That it's a specialized material for that sound attenuation, and it's a screen wall. It acts as a screen wall as well, visual screen wall.
And its life expectancy is?
Fairly long. I mean, we've built a couple of them. We've had them for 10 years. It's not longer than that, but they're just panels. So if any of the panels, would deteriorate over time, which they're not. I mean, they're warranted, I think, for, I don't know what their warranty is, but they are supposed to last a very long time, but they're just slots, they're columns and then slots, so you can pull them out if there's any deterioration.
Do we have any elevations on the school?
Elevations on the school?
Yeah, because the school's right across the street from there, I believe, isn't it?
It's in that area, yeah. Actually, but with the way that property runs back, it would be directly across the street.
It would be directly
Pretty
across
much.
the street.
Yeah.
Across over here.
That's the mall right
Right.
there. That's a little strip mall right there.
This is a strip mall, right? The school is
School is
back
a little
over
bit,
here.
probably the middle of your building,
Yeah.
or close to the front. I have a question, and I live next door to one, that's why I'm asking it. You got a absorbing wall for the truckers, and you want to put a wall around for the air unit and all that on the roof of the building. Are you going to absorb that also? The wall that absorbs at least that side or the whole thing?
The sound of an
The sound,
HVAC
yeah.
unit? Yeah, the screen wall around
But will
the
be the
sound absorbing material.
Not just the screen wall.
Yes, if it's on the roof. I'm not sure they'll be on the roof, but yes.
That's what I'm asking you, is it gonna be on the roof?
I'm not sure if the
What I'm
HVAC,
asking you is, are they gonna, I'm trying to give the residents a chance to not hear the thing kick on and off, is what I'm trying to get.
understood, and
So
yes.
if we can have the opportunity to stop that being heard, it makes you happy, us happy, everybody else happy.
Are you air conditioning the whole warehouse or just the office space within it?
We're not sure yet. Right now, it's planned just to be the office space, but it's possible it could be the whole building. So, but if that were the case, we would put up sound attenuating screen wall around the units, especially if they're, on this side of the building, which we would try to avoid. So, and again, this is just, this cut off here just for, to blow it up. But we would do our best not to put units close to the residents, but even if they were close, we would put up sound attenuating screening material to handle that.
Any further questions? Go ahead.
I guess this might go further along with the HVAC. I think with the number of variances in terms of the width of driveways and things, and the proximity to what looks like parking spaces or bays around the entirety of the building, I think they're, correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have a mechanical engineer in-house right now, I think you will have to put HVAC systems upon the roof. I don't, unless this interesting line, this cutoff, I don't foresee, what is it? I don't foresee 17,000 square feet of office space in a single air handler unit. I think it's going to demand a larger space.
So it wouldn't. If we just are air conditioning the office, but I would agree with you if the whole building is air conditioned.
Okay.
If we're just air conditioning or temperature controlling the office space,
18,000 square feet.
yeah, we could handle that in pockets here on the ground adjacent to the offices.
Okay, so I thought the office was up at that. That's what I was saying.
There's one here, but I mean, you'd be able to put an air handler on the ground
Okay.
adjacent to it, or even put an air handler in the front here that you run back to it. If the whole building is air conditioned, I would agree, it would most certainly have to have rooftop units, but that's not determined at this point.
So in tent A10, are the little corners office spaces,
I think the box out,
little boxes?
yeah, those are intended to be office spaces. And there's no guarantee that all of that is needed either. We put it in as a best estimate at this point.
Okay.
But there could be less office space too, depending on the ultimate user.
Any other questions?
Shipping and receiving.
Questions?
Yeah.
Taylor?
Just to clarify that, so if there is rooftop mounted equipment, do we have a sense of how tall that might be from the roof height measured up?
I don't. It would be plus or minus 5 feet, give or take.
And that would then, you mentioned be parapet screened,
Parapet
sound
screened.
attenuating material.
Yeah,
Coloring of that screening be similar to the building facade?
similar to the building facade.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just going back to the sound wall on the north end of the property, you indicate the top of the wall height at elevation 380, and the ground elevation, obviously, it changes. But is the overall average height of the wall then like 14 feet, I think I heard you say?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Is there locations where it's taller than that, or?
It would be the wall height would be the idea would be to get pretty consistent 380. So if there's undulation in the ground, there may be parts where the wall, but the top of the wall would be, that would be the approach, is to get to elevation 380.
You mentioned a light colored material, and then that in your experience with that material, does that attract mold and mildew and things like?
It typically does not.
It does not, okay.
No.
All right.
And it's a surface that's relatively easy to clean. You have to it'll be maintained and, it's pretty durable.
Is it the same as
And then
the
the-
building itself, the wall?
It's not the same. So the building is tilt-up or precast concrete with some architectural reveals and so forth, but it's all concrete. This is made up of a different material that is, I think, a plastic. I'm not exactly sure. I can, when we come back for final, we'll have all those details. If the board is so inclined to approve us here, but it's a different material.
Just the one other point of clarification was the ground-mounted HVAC units, if they're needed. You're saying if the entire space is conditioned, they would definitely be on the roof. But if not, just office spaces, you'll deal with it on the ground. And I don't know if we can ask Kyle to quantify how much additional impervious those pads are going to consume. Probably not a lot, but just, it's going to change the lot coverage calculation slightly.
Yeah, and I think, that would be, it's possible those units could be on the roof. We would do our best to balance those two things.
But I also think we have impervious to spare. The zone permits 65%, and we're at about 60.4.
Right.
So we got some acreage to play with.
I have a lighting issue on your parking lot, all right? I know you have directional lights, you have all that to keep away from the homeowners and stuff. I've seen it, I've witnessed it. I don't know I'd like to know what your lights look like, kinda, because I think you need a shield on that side that doesn't allow that light to go back at all right? It allows it to go forward towards the building, all right? That does not allow it to reflect back, all right? And I'm not gonna go any further into that, but that's, I think.
You're saying for the parking
For the
area.
parking lot back there, I think it's very important for that, all right? I'm waiting for a tree to grow. All right, to get it off my house, all right? I think you need to do that, that's my opinion, all right, as something that would benefit the overlook residents, all right, and they do make them. Is that something you plan on putting in place, or?
And I think Kyle testified last time, Kyle McKenna from Bowler, that's certainly something that we're willing to do to the extent it's available. We'll work with the engineers and the building department to make sure we do as much of that as we can.
It reflects it.
Right.
Down and
It's,
back.
there's shields.
Yeah,
There's shields
yes,
on the lights,
yes.
yes. But, we need to have the safety covered, but certainly the idea is not to shine lights into the overlook.
That's what
Yes.
Any further questions?
I think last time, I'm sorry, regarding the sound from mechanical equipment, last time I think it was agreed to that any noise standards would be achieved at the property line. So just want to clarify, that's the state sound code, 65 decibels daytime, 50 decibels at nighttime.
Yeah, and that is the protection, right? It's a state statute. We have to comply with it, and we will comply with it.
Do you have any information on the sound material, how much of an attenuation is experienced when you have that sound wall, and from what distances?
It's pretty significant. I don't have specifics.
I can't go on pretty significant.
I appreciate that. We have a similar circumstance in another community where we actually put a sound wall kind of between two buildings. And the distance between the sound wall and that property line, I believe, was similar to this, about 100 or so feet from sound wall to property line. And it,
So what was the, actual?
the decibel drop,
Drop.
I don't know. I can get you that information. And, as we talked about last time, if the board was inclined, as we would potentially progress to final, we'd be willing to do a sound study and have all those details as a condition of final approval. So you wouldn't have to rely on just meeting the state statute, which we are required to do. We'd be willing to put that out there. Come back with it.
What's been my experience with sound walls, that it will decrease the pressure of the sound, the attenuation that you have, but the quality of the sound is not affected. 65 decibels of forest noise in the evening is a lot more palatable than 65 decibels of Kenworth wheels rolling down a highway. So you can measure the decibel drop, but the quality of sound is a perception of the individual that's there. I mean, anyone here in the township will know that on Route 22, you're hearing the wheels go and, at night and stuff like that. So this is not a panacea of dropping what the noise is going to do. So, well, any further questions of the board? If not, I'll open it to the audience, to our representative. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donald Scholl, Little C for the Overlook Condominium.
Yes, do you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, I do. Ms. Langsberger, thank you for being responsive to the points that were raised last time. It's appreciated. With regard to the sound wall, the posts are set in footings?
Yes.
And then the panels are slid in?
Yes.
If there's any damage to those panels or they deteriorate over time, would there be a commitment to replace them?
Absolutely. And like I mentioned, we have this other one that's been in place for about 10 years and have not had any issues with it.
And with regard to the composition, you said it was plastic?
There are different materials that they can be constructed of. I'm not exactly sure of the specifics. We certainly can get that information and the specifications. But it's either I think it's a plastic or a metal. It's something and it has some holes on it on the sound generating side to absorb sound.
If there's any information with regard to that, so that we could check it, so much is available on the internet now in terms of absorption, it just would facilitate us understanding it.
Sure.
And identifying the degree of attenuation.
Sure.
One of the things we're wrestling at, not to belabor the time, but I think the first floor, as we calculated it, for the two building units, it's 14 on the left. It's elevation 360. The second floor is elevation 370. With regard to the berm top, originally it was 374, and I think there was a commitment at the meeting to, I thought it was to increase it by 10 feet, but if I'm doing the math, 374 to 380, it's really 5 feet. But then we're looking at essentially the profile. That angle to the building, it's coming in at 391. So we're wrestling with that difference that's visible clearly from the second floor, particularly of building 14, and to a certain extent the adjacent building as well. And that's what we're wrestling a little bit with. The sound wall certainly provides attenuation. That's significant. That's enormous. That's an enormous quality of life issue for the folks that are here. So we're looking at the visual buffer as well as the sound attenuation. And then you indicated that the preference is not to put it on top of the berm. But that was one of the points to achieving both sound attenuation and also that visual sight break. And then if the wall were staggered, there'd be an ability then to maintain landscaping, I think, from the wetlands feature to the left there on the northern portion of the site.
That's
correct. So I'm just wondering if there was additional thought given with regard to the location of that wall.
There was, and we tried to think of it from exactly those perspectives, and appreciate the comment. We looked at putting it on top of the berm And I think as we dig in with more and more specificity here, some of the topography and elevations, we're trying to get it as high as we can. And so we looked at it and we said, well, we were a resident here. If you had a wall on top of the berm, it would sacrifice some of this landscaping. You just can't plant where you have the footings and the columns, as you and the wall that you mentioned before. So you would lose some of that visual landscaping screening, and we thought that was important to keep, and then have the wall sit behind it closer to the sound source, which makes that wall more effective, the sound attenuation more effective. So we did give it thought, and that's kind of where we landed, so that this view would have landscaping and a berm up to, it varies that elevation, but up to a certain elevation, and then a screen sound wall behind that, and then obviously the building behind that.
And just to round out that point in that discussion, with regard to the berm height, 374, was it 10 feet to 384 or 5 feet to 379, 380?
So this berm, and we stretched it, I think a little bit, but it was plus or minus 371, and then it goes, varies here and goes up to, sorry if the board can't see this as well, it varies here and then goes up to roughly 380 elevation. Here we also, looked at maybe picking up, dropping this elevation slightly so you can pick up a little bit more height differential. Look, we're willing to go as high as we can fit here. There's a limit, just based on the dimensions.
The width. And then one last item on that point, just for the folks that are here. There was also discussion about increasing the height of the plantings last time. Just wanted to highlight that commitment still is maintained.
Yes, for sure. And that's, all of this heavy landscape berm and even in the buffer area, we're still committed to putting, these are not saplings, we're putting in, I think it was 10 to 12 foot mature.
Not 6 foot minimum, 10 feet minimum.
10 foot minimum, yeah.
And then with regard to the lighting, the shielding, the discussion last time had been so that there's no visible light source in the overlook units. Is that still the commitment?
That's still a commitment. Yeah, I mean, again, I qualify that with the safety. We will shield it away, place them facing away from the overlook community, put shields on the fixtures, have them downlit. I can't say it would be, we would try to get to 100%, so that none of the light sources here, the actual bulb itself, right, is visible. I think that certainly will be the case, but I can't say that you won't see any light here from the residential.
Light source.
It's the light
Because from
source,
the second
yes.
floor of the units, that would be what would just stand out starkly.
And we will
to
do that.
Any resident.
Yeah, we will commit to do that.
And one final item with regard to timers, particularly in weekend hours. Was there any consideration given to that?
For the lighting?
Correct.
So, and I think we talked about this last time, to the extent that the facility is not operational, we would look at kind of a minimum safety, security type light. That's a little bit out of our control as the owner, depending on who the ultimate tenant is. But we certainly understand the point, and we'll do our best to minimize that as much as possible. The timers, they wouldn't be off, I guess is my point. You still need a minimum kind of safety, security light in that general area, even if it's weekend hours.
Possibly every second light or every third light is a thought, or motion detectors. If you're going later shifts or on the weekends, you're probably going to have fewer employees there on site. Human nature is to park closer to the building. Here, the outer spaces are closer to the units.
Sure.
So you're not really using them. That's a thought.
And that's, certainly understand that. The lighting provides two things, right? It's safety and security for those employees that are coming to the building, but it's also, if for some reason someone not affiliated with the building gets there, we want to we want to have that visibility from a security standpoint.
So there could be consideration not only the timers, but also sensors, which would then pick up if there's vehicles that are there.
Sure. We're willing to consider that.
There's going to be a question, you might as well cover it. The wall that's identified here does not obviously extend through the entire property line. The thought there in terms of having the wall run for the length that's depicted on the plan in contrast to the entire property line.
Sure. So, and we did look at that. You know, this is a much bigger berm, and again, we were trying to maintain that 380, that 16 feet. And so this berm, you're at the same height as the top of the wall is here. The reason why the wall is here is because this berm can't get to that height. So the idea is from both the visual and sound attenuation perspective to screen that. Here you're accomplishing both by just the berm. Here the berm can't accomplish both because it can't get high enough. So we have the sound wall there to make up effectively the fact that we can't get as high a berm.
And your berm is wider at that point.
Correct. We took it to the point where it widens out and effectively accomplishes the same thing.
And the commitments to the height of the plantings extends the entire planting along the property.
That's correct. Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
You're quite welcome. Is there anyone else from the audience that would have a question for this gentleman? Yes, ma'am.
Due to the tax 47 Kyle Drive, can you approach the podium, please? Sure. Sprinklers, how are we watering all those plants? Like, what's the irrigation for the trees? Because we've seen trees planted at other warehouses and they die. So how do we make sure? Is there a irrigation system that's being put in, sprinklers that are going to run?
There would be an irrigation system, and we would commit to replanting if trees die. You know, after that initial planting, we'll replant, and the township, we can bond against that. So there's some security that if the landscaping dies, it'll be.
So there's not going to be an irrigation system. You're just going to make sure that they get watered.
No, there will be an irrigation
Oh, like
system.
a sprinkler system.
Yeah, there will be.
So I didn't hear, what type of trees are we planting? Are we planting evergreen trees so that all year long there is a absorption of sound? Because the wall, yes, absorbs, but you also need trees both in front of the wall and behind to help with that absorption. You can't just rely on the wall because that can push the sound up. So are we going to have trees in front and in back there? I think I see, and will they be evergreen trees so that they're absorbing and that they're, you know, all year long?
We do have them here. I am not a sound expert, but I believe that having gone through it a few times, they typically do not give any credit for trees absorbing sound. However, and maybe this is a question, Kyle, for you, in terms of the types of trees that are along that buffer. I think we testified along that previously.
Evergreens and deciduous or something.
Mix of evergreens and deciduous.
Because, great, it looks really lush in like late spring and the summer, and that would cover everything. But now when the leaves fall, as beautiful as it may look in the fall, come winter and early spring, you don't have that same coverage, you don't have that same absorption.
Yeah, so it would be a mix. And we would intersperse it so you'd have you know, as good a coverage as we could provide.
We'd also work very closely with the township's planner and engineer, you know, when it comes to plantings
The
and
types of
replacements.
trees. So a common, I think, critique of, you spoke about along highways, the types of walls that are there, is that sound goes up, right? And so now it's going up. And now it's not just affecting those buildings, it would affect other buildings because it would push the sound over. So are there trees in front of it also for absorption, or is in
There
front of the
are,
wall?
yeah, we have 2 rows of trees, one in front, one behind, and then plus the berm closest to overlook.
And then, excuse my ignorance here, so you are the, you own the property now and you're developing on it. Is it going to be sold or rented?
So we don't own it yet. The Deschler Dicker family has owned it for generations. We have an agreement, a contract with them to purchase it, to develop this building.
Right.
We are long-term owners, so our intention is we will be here. We're not going to develop it and sell it.
Okay.
But it will be rented, so there will be a tenant there. We're not sure who that tenant is.
But your promises of, making sure you maintain it and keep the trees, that's going to be on you guys.
Correct.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Donna Schneider, 26 Meadowview. I guess it's just more of a comment than a question. The problem with the trees there and having deciduous and evergreen, and when they do die, it's great that you replace them, but the problem is the 2 feet or 3 feet of growth that happened now has been reduced back down to the original size. So we're back to square one every time a tree dies. Is that, is there a way, how do you maintain that screening, as these trees grow?
Well, again, these aren't saplings, right? They're significant
Correct.
trees from the start. And the intention is, you may have some, at the initial planting, what we found typically developing all over the country is you will typically see, and maybe some of the township professionals can comment as well, at the initial planting, you may see some of those not take.
Right.
But and we would replace those. Typically, over time, yes, you may have a one-off tree that dies, but typically across, across the landscaping, you wouldn't have a mass kind of die out of trees that all of a sudden you lose all that growth.
Well,
Which is part of why we balance evergreens and deciduous, right?
Yeah.
You want to have a nice mix so that you have different species and you do have a variated perspective and screen.
Yeah, and I think before lanternflies appeared in this area, that would be true. But I have trees on my property that I planted 10 years ago, and the lanternflies decimated them, and now I have 6-foot trees instead of 20-foot trees on my property. So, there's a lot of other things to consider, disease and infestations. So, if you're not going to spray for those kind of things, the likelihood of all those trees taking is kind of minimal, even though they're not saplings. But it's just an observation, I guess, more than a question. So, thank you.
Was there another woman back there had her hand up or, okay. Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. And,
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd next like to call Traffic Engineer John Witchner, who was previously qualified, previously testified. But I think he probably needs to be sworn in, so much time to that.
Is it Mr. Witchner?
Witchner, W-I-C-H-N-E-R, yes.
Got it. Mr. Witchner, if you would raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give here tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please proceed.
John Witchner with McMahon Associates. I've previously provided testimony on the traffic impact study and the traffic aspects of this project. I believe it was the May 2021 hearing with the township. Since that hearing, there were really 2 items that we were asked to specifically address. One being the combination now with the front parcel now being part of the project. Now the combination of the driveways was kind of referred to as a very plastic site. Previously, the NFI proposal had its own driveway to Strikers Road. Now those driveways will be combined. We were asked to take a look at an analysis of the combined driveways. The other item that we were asked to take a look at was the inclusion of the bridge development project just to the south of our site, the solar field, to the south on Strikers Road. And so I'm going to give a kind of an update on those 2 particular aspects. Regarding the new configuration of the proposed driveway, really a combination of the driveways, The combination reduces the number of driveways now along Strikers Road. Instead of 3 driveways right in a row, bridge, NFI, and the old Berry Plastics driveway, we are now down to 2 driveways, and it really solves an access management effort in terms of reducing conflicts in that area. It also allows us to get farther away from the proposed bridge development driveway as well. In the previous proposal, the previous NFI driveway and the bridge development driveway were almost touching each other from a radius perspective. Now we're in excess of 120 feet separation distance from the 2 driveways. In addition,
Are you proposing to cut off the existing driveway coming out of Berry Plastics now? In order to move that from the
It'll be a combined driveway with Berry Plastics.
NFI,
Yes,
not with Bridge?
that's correct.
Where Bridge proposes theirs, they're moving that now, or are you moving further away from it?
The NFI proposal is moving farther away from the bridge proposed driveway. Bridge proposed driveway is around the northern property line of their property. We are getting farther away from the southern property line of the NFI parcel, really, or the Berry Plastics parcel, and combining with.
Memory serves correctly, the Berry driveway coming out alongside the building comes directly out straight onto Strikers Road. Are you proposing?
That's correct.
To make a right-hand turn there to come back and intercept where that basin is in the front there?
If I can show I'm pointing to, let's see.
A15.
I'm sorry?
I think that's A10.
Okay, thank you. A10, the existing Berry Plastics driveway will remain as is, and the access to the back NFI parcel will continue past the side of the building and then into the proposed parcel in the rear, which was testified to in the previous hearing in terms of the revised, the amended site plan.
Well, how do we get 3 driveways in the front with Berry, NFI, and Bridge?
We don't have 3 driveways anymore.
You just said we had 3 driveways there.
In my last testimony in May of 2021, there were 3 driveways. We are now down to 2 driveways. The area, the proximity of this area, we're down to 2 driveways. The bridge development driveway proposed by others on the northern property line where the solar field is, and the combined driveway of Berry Plastics and the NFI driveway.
Is basically still on the same property or land, shall we say, of the existing Berry Plastics driveway.
That's correct. Okay. Yes. So a year ago, we were at 3 driveways. Now this area has 2 driveways on the western side of Strikers Road. We're trying to, one of the, a typical planning principle is to reduce the number of conflict points and reduce the number of driveways, which we are now able to do. Thirdly, the driveway now aligns. One of the previous questions from the board engineer a year ago was a misalignment of the proposed NFI driveway with driveways across the street. That has now been solved because of the combined driveway in the existing Berry Plastics location. If you can see on this plan, the existing Berry Plastics driveway aligns with the driveway across the street. One of the previous concerns was the previous NFI driveway was misaligned, and now we were able to maintain the alignment with the driveway across the street. And then fourth, in terms of traffic and operations, that driveway, the combined driveway of Berry Plastics, does operate acceptable levels of service with the NFI proposal. The second topic that we were asked to take a look at was the inclusion of the bridge development and their traffic impacts. We took our previously submitted traffic impact study and overlaid on top of that the traffic associated with the bridge development just to the south of our parcel. Really, the main aspect of what that analysis revealed really focuses on the intersection of Strikers Road and County Route 519. both we've identified in the past and Bridge identified in the past, and our combined analysis identifies the need for a traffic signal at that intersection. In a previously approved and now constructed land development application on the south, to the south on Strikers Road, that applicant has made a contribution to the county engineer's office for the design and implementation or construction of that traffic signal. In coordination with the county engineer's office, as recently as about 5 weeks ago, the design of that traffic signal is underway. There is no timetable that they could commit to in terms of the implementation or installation of that signal, but it's consistent with my conversations with the county engineer's office. We imagine through our process with the county engineer and the county approval process that there may possibly be an expectation for a contribution as well, and we need to discuss that with the county through that approval process. Hitting on those two items, I did want to certainly address Suburban's review letter from April 19th. Now, a lot of these comments were part of my testimony because they were, I guess I'll call it repeats or confirmations from a review letter from Colliers in April of 2021. I just want to kind of hit some high notes here. The traffic comments from Suburban start on page 11 under section 5.0. And again, I don't want to repeat all of my testimony from May of 2021. I do want to hit some of the high points here. In comment 5.01 discusses trip generation. We utilize regression equations in the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual based upon studies of existing sites throughout the country. Since no tenant has been identified for the site yet, we utilize square footage of the building as an independent variable, which is consistent with NJDOT policy. However, as in the case with many municipalities, and suggested in a subsequent comment from Suburban's review letter, and similar to the town's requirement imposed upon at least one other developer along Strikers Road, the applicant is aware that the board may request a post-development study to confirm the trip generation that we are anticipating. In fact, at last year's meeting, in which I provided testimony, NFI was committed to that condition should the board move this project along. 5.02 again really reiterates the request for a post-development study 6 months after the full occupancy of the building. I had committed to that previously as well, and that was confirmed in Suburban's review letter from April 19th. Comment 5.03 discusses the intersection of Strikers Road and Route 57. I was the traffic engineer for the previously approved and now constructed development along Strikers Road to the south here. And so my history with NJDOT at that intersection, we had made a submission to NJDOT for signal retiming at that intersection. Those timings were approved. The way the DOT requested to implement those is that they will now take those under advisement and then they implement those timings when they see fit. We anticipate a very similar process for this particular project. One of the aspects, though, that was discussed the last time I gave testimony on this project, our traffic study was contemplating some trucks exiting the driveway, and again, pointing to Exhibit A10, exiting the driveway via a right turn and heading up Strikers Road to Route 57. At the last meeting, it was confirmed that the applicant would restrict those right turn egress movements of trucks. And so our traffic study is a little bit conservative in terms of the impacts that we were showing at 57 and Strikers Road. However, we still are committed to making that submission to the DOT for any kind of additional retiming that's necessary at that intersection. In comment 5.04, and I touched upon this a little bit in my opening discussion, Traffic study discusses Warren County considering installation of a new traffic signal at Strikers Road and Uniontown Road, County Route 519. And again, that signal is funded, is under design, and we're continually coordinating with the county to understand the schedule for implementation and installation of that traffic signal. Continuing on Suburban's review letter, comments 5.05, 5.06, 5.07, 5.08, and 5.09, testimony was provided on those particular comments by Mr. McKenna at the previous hearing. I do then want to go to comment 510, which requests the township and this office, Suburban, must be provided copies of any future submissions to Warren County and/or NJDOT, and that is certainly a will comply. We'll continue to copy the municipality on any future submissions with both of those entities. In comment 5.11, again, that was a testimony addressing that comment was provided by Mr. McKenna at the last hearing. Comment 5.12, the applicant shall provide testimony in the new driveway location and its impact on traffic. And again, just want to reiterate, we are reducing driveways in this area as compared to the previous proposal. We are getting farther away from the proposed bridge development driveway, which is on the northern, close to the northern property line of their parcel. And we now remain aligned with the driveway across the street on Strikers Road. So reducing a number of conflict points there. And then lastly, the levels of service for the operations of those driveways operate at acceptable levels of service. Suburban's office also, requested as part of their letter the submission of an updated traffic impact study to memorialize this testimony, and that is certainly will comply, and that will be provided to their office and to the town as well. Lastly, rounding out the comments in the traffic section, 5.13 was testified to by Mr. McKenna at the last hearing as well. So again, I wanted to address the two main points that were requested of me during previous testimony, and then highlight some of my previous testimony on the remainder comments by Suburban.
So that will conclude our direct testimony from Mr. Witchner. If the board has any questions.
Mr. Witchner, you were indicating to us that you have no connection to any of the road work on Bridges' property.
That is correct.
So that leaves you with one access into your property.
That is correct.
Basically fairly narrow. What happens if there's a disaster in there?
It's approximately 40 feet wide. The drive aisle next to the existing Berry Plastics building, accessing Strikers Road.
And that 40-foot line is right up against the building.
There is a buffer between the driveway and the building. It's approximately, I'm going to say about 10 feet of vegetation and grass area in that area. And 40 feet is really allowed for 3 lanes of traffic. I believe it's going to be striped as 2 lanes of traffic, but
maybe for cars, but not for trucks.
The 40-foot width would have a double, likely have a double yellow line down the middle or a single yellow line to
2 20-foot lanes.
Correct. That is correct.
Do you recall when your traffic study was done?
Yes, all of the counts were conducted in May of 2019 and November of 2019, certainly before COVID and pandemic impacts to traffic volumes in the area.
Was Berry Plastics open at that time?
Yes. They were in a traffic study accounted for the full operations of Berry Plastics.
So you said there was a contribution, to the county about a signal there at that intersection. So is that just for a signal, or are they thinking about, widening that intersection, or?
And this is part of of a nearby development that was previously approved and constructed south along Strikers Road. My understanding was that that was for the installation of a traffic signal without any additional geometric improvements. I've advised this applicant that when they are going through the county approval process, that there would likely be a contribution based upon the county regulations.
So you said that you would agree to a post-development study. What happens if, the traffic isn't working the way that, you thought it would? Is there some kind of way to?
That eliminates one of my questions, but go ahead.
Is there a way that you're gonna, are you gonna post a bond or something to try to, because I'm gonna tell you what is gonna happen. You're gonna have trucks trying to come in. You can say that you won't let them turn right, but what about the guys that are coming down 57 that are gonna try and make a left into it? They're gonna do it. They're not gonna go all the way around and try to come back in. They're gonna do it. And if you only have 40 feet, that's not enough.
But we're not contemplating a restriction for left turn ingress vehicles at that driveway. It's the right turn exiting movements of trucks out of the driveway toward 57. Those will be restricted. In terms of the post-development study, and I guess I'll characterize it as, the language has been already created or already written for other applicants and applications in the township. What we've seen in other applications is that a post-development study approximately 6 months after the full operations of the building would be conducted. That information would then be submitted to the town and the board engineer for review. And I don't have the exact language that was in the developer's agreement of the previous application, which I keep mentioning or referencing. But it gives the opportunity to address any kind of deficiencies that is seen if the traffic is far and above what we're anticipating in our study. I will mention two items about that. One, the data that we use from the Institute of Transportation Engineers is based upon 50, 60, 70 existing sites throughout the country. These are not theoretical numbers. These are actual buildings that are constructed with this particular land use of warehousing and distribution land use. So there is real data that the ITE does publish, which we then utilize, which is consistent with NJDOT policy. Secondly, again, referencing the previous application to the south of this site, that application conducted a post-development study 6 months after the opening. I believe it opened in September of 2021, and a post-development study was conducted in February of 2022. And those trips for that particular tenant mirrored very closely, plus or minus during the peak hours of what was anticipated, not only by ITE, but also in the traffic study that was conducted for that particular development. So, we have a couple real-time data points for this land use code, and again, using square footage as an independent variable, that doesn't change. That doesn't change, tenant to tenant. That is on the plan. And so the types of tenants that are attracted or that are being attracted by the applicant really fit into the data of 50, 60, 70 data points across the country, and then also from a micro perspective in this township with a very similar existing size building.
I have a question for you. And it might be directed to one of you, I don't know. Experience of it. If we overload the street, let's just say we're going to go south on Strikers Road, all right, every warehouse lets out at the same time, everybody's coming home, trucks are going the whole 9 yards. You got a potential to shut everything down, correct? I had worked in a place that actually eliminated that and only let so many people out of the parking lot at a certain time. Meaning, you'd let out 3 cars and then it wouldn't let any more out. All right, and then it would give it a minute or whatever it would be, and then it would let 3 more out. Is that something that would control that intersection? Is that something that would be beneficial to add into this thing to control so the public can run down that road also? Or is that like not acceptable?
You're experiencing that, I think, on 57 and Spectre Road now,
Right.
that the northbound traffic coming out to cross 57 to the side of the highway, you can get, if no one's making a left turn there, which stops traffic, maybe you get 4 or 5 cars out on a light change.
Right.
And I think everybody in the township knows about 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Yeah, you're not going.
No, they're way down past very plastic as far as being backed up. So, I don't know how you would regulate
Well,
that.
what that did for the plan was it didn't allow every department to be let out at the same time. Okay, and then they put a light out at the intersection
We're
going
talking
out.
about staggered.
So you staggered your shifts, which didn't create the load as much, and then you staggered them getting out. Okay, so it staggered it again, all right? And it eliminated the traffic on that road to keep moving a little faster.
If we're looking at the amount of employees that are gonna be a problem here, it's gonna
That's
be
what
the
I'm
truck
talking
traffic. we're
Truck
looking at
and
coming in and out.
employees.
And what really concerns me a great deal is about the driveway coming out on Strikers Road there, because if you look at that plan there, directly across the street from it, I see 1, 2, 3 driveways there. I believe one, it starts with, probably the driveway from the old conveyor building that was there. You got H and R trucking, I think that's there. You also have another H and something or other trucking up where the old Rick's building used to be. And then you're down, you're into the
There's a lot
roadway
going on.
going down between the asphalt plant and the concrete plant, and also the concrete driveway that's there. So, I mean, we got a lot of different mixing right in a very short period of,
Yes, and if everybody lets out the same.
short
time,
length
you
of
can create a nice-
roadway there that we're looking at. We're looking at a roadway that, what's the 2-lane widths on Strikers? Are they 18 feet, I think it is, each one? We have like a 4-foot striped off portion, but it's basically a 1-lane road with
It's a 1-lane
two,
road.
say, 14-foot lanes.
And certainly the applicant doesn't,
55-foot tractor trailer is making a left-hand turn only coming out of that driveway. Is going to block those 2 systems there, and somebody's coming out from a driveway on the other side. I mean, the intermix of that traffic there is going to be a nightmare, so.
well, what I can say is we don't control any accesses or driveways across the street. What we control is the access to our property.
Exactly,
And-
but
and-
you
and-
are contributing it to it by building this.
And we're not adding any additional driveways to the Strikers Road corridor, but with the combination of the Berry Plastics
But you're
driveway.
increasing
What-
the amount of traffic that's on it.
By the sheer construction of this building, that's a true statement. What we want to do is design this site from an access management perspective to combine a driveway with Berry Plastics that does not add any additional driveways to the site that we control. Again, we don't control anything across the street. In addition, the driveway radii are intended to be designed to allow for the easier turning movements, left turning in, not right turns out, but lefts out, and rights into the site to allow trucks to not have to cross the double yellow line or impede any oncoming traffic. And that's where the radii are designed to accommodate those turn movements, save for the right egress movement, which is being restricted.
So let's talk about the intersection of Strikers Road and 57. In and out of your facility may be fine. It's really not your issue, but at 57 and Strikers Road, anybody coming out of there that's going to make a right-hand turn is not only going to swing into somebody who may be coming across Strikers Road into that, they're also going to swing into the turning lane, making a left into Strikers Road. We've seen it. We've got pictures, not arguing your numbers or anything like that, but I have an old saying that you never know what you're going to get till you get it. And we've all seen it. And while, your traffic study, you're definitely contributing to the traffic that's going to be going in and out of that facility. So those are my concerns, and you can put all the signage up that you want. The trucks are an issue. We have a situation on Belvedere Road right now, in front of my own home, and Councilman Wright's mother lives probably a mile and a half down the road from me. I don't know where they're going. They're really not going to our warehouses. Our police have been out there several times, so we definitely have a truck issue. I came back from Easton the other day from the doctors, hit the jug handle at Lincoln Road. You probably don't even know where that is. Cross 22, tractor trailer followed me right up Lincoln Street in Phillipsburg, made the right up Belvedere Road, past the high school entrance, past the bar entrance, and I'm assuming they're going out to Route 80 on 519. They're certainly not going to our warehouse on Strikers Road. So, you know, there's problems all over the place. And again, you don't know what you're going to get till you get it. We can talk about berms and all that other stuff, and that's all nice. We want to do our best to protect our residents, and I think that's been addressed here tonight. But the traffic is just, you know, and I can't worry about what other townships are doing, but if the trucks were to follow the proper route and come down 519, say you're coming out of Belvedere, they really should make the left where 627, which is known as Belvedere Road, goes straight. They should make the left and get down 519. But when they get to the light at 519 and 57, they've now got to make a right because they can't go through the tunnels. And now they're going to try and garner some speed going up that hill, which is going to be a disaster. And the very first left that they can make to get back out to 519 is going to be going down Strikers Road. It's going to happen. So, you know, it's just I've lived here all my life, and I would like to think that the people before me tried to do the best to handle the growth, and that's what we're trying to do. But we got some serious questions.
And what we've been able to commit to is coordinating with the DOT for signal timing at that intersection, copying the board engineer on those submissions. And that's, you know, that, and as well as working with the county, not at that particular intersection, because they're more focused at 519 and Strikers Road.
Yeah. But Strikers Road at 57, the only way you're gonna widen that, you gotta go back to the railroad, and that's gonna take an act of Congress to open that thing up. So that's really the only way it's gonna be solved.
Mr. Wicker, just a point of clarification, you mentioned an ITE, was it an ITE data from February 2022? Or was it your traffic study only as of 2019 was the last one that you initially did for the preliminary site?
There's a couple different dates that I had discussed. The traffic study for this particular site was based upon 2019 traffic volumes in May and in November of that year.
Okay.
That was the basis of the traffic study for this particular development, and certainly before COVID and that changed some traffic patterns. My reference to February of 2022 was the post-development study that was done for the really recently constructed warehouse to the south of this site on Strikers Road. Those were the two dates that I had referenced. Two totally different things, but I wanted to clarify that.
No, I appreciate it, because I think that if it wasn't for the data accumulated in the February 22 study, that the 2019 would be quite short-sighted. Because without the data, I don't know if it's possible that another traffic study should be done with the data coming from, because when you created the first study for this preliminary site plan, that site didn't exist, correct?
Correct. So in February of 2022, we recounted a number of intersections, specifically the existing now constructed warehouse, as well as the intersection of 519 and Strikers Road. We compared the 2022 counts with the new warehouse to the 2019 counts, and 2022 is lower today than it was in 2019. That was the basis of our traffic study. So in our traffic study, we take higher counts in 2019, and then we layer on top of that not only our site, but then also other developments that we anticipate coming online in the next 2 or 3 years. You know, now what I guess is the USPS has their building there on Strikers Road, as well as other developments. So we layer on top of all that traffic. So what happens is that ultimately we have a conservative traffic study, because if we went out there and counted again
in June of 2022, the starting point's gonna be a lot lower, which is what we saw in February 2022 as well.
You're telling this board that a few months ago, traffic was lower on Strikers Road than it was 3 years ago?
Based upon the counts that we have, yes, absolutely. That's the data that I have, that we counted.
Do you have the data points for our engineer? Are you privy to the data points?
I haven't seen it. I had some questions about that.
Okay. So as you mentioned in 5.10, that you will.
Absolutely, we're absolutely going to comply with that comment, yes. Yep.
Accordingly. In terms of the driveway, and I think Mr. McKenna last time spoke a little bit about the retention ponds and the runoff area, which goes smack dab in between your two driveways. And I don't think it's utilized, perhaps, I think it will be utilized, but I don't think the basin is actually depicted clearly in A10. For the record, one water basin storm runoff area is directly in the middle of those two driveways, correct?
I can't specifically speak to that. That wasn't under my purview in terms of developing a survey for that area.
When you developed a survey, the one basin in sight that could perhaps flood into your driveway was not in your purview?
Which basin are you referencing?
If you stick your pen in between both driveways.
Right here.
That's it.
Our traffic study focuses on capacity, it focuses on traffic volumes, it focuses on traffic numbers, it does not focus on
impervious surface or access to, or in terms of like flood issues on your driveway.
Correct. That's typically handled by a stormwater management report for the on-site design.
Okay. And in terms of the creation of this driveway, right, the berry plastics, whatever everyone's calling it, what does that do to the current berm, the planting and the retention wall in place?
Well, I think that's more of a, and I may have to.
Site question.
I may have to refer to Mr. McKenna's testimony on that.
But that's your driveway, right?
It is a driveway. We look at the driveway in terms of the number of trips that are there from an existing perspective and the number of trips that are there from a proposed perspective, and then analyze the operations of the driveway, not the physical topography, curvature, or stormwater management of that. That is an on-site analysis performed by the site engineer.
Okay, I appreciate it. And in terms of a fire aisle, that wouldn't be under your kind of purview as well?
That tends to be a combination of, of what is, what access is available, is there any emergency access available, are there any easements available?
Because there's one, just entrance and egress.
That is correct. That is correct. And again, it's approximately 40 feet wide, which is, wider than most driveways. It, however, can accommodate two trucks passing each other, in that area.
Okay. As you see the flow of traffic, I think we were talking about last time, it will circulate the entirety of the warehouse, correct? Truck traffic?
It can. I think it's kind of a darker gray ring road in this area, as I'm pointing to exhibit A10, completely around the building.
Okay.
I know you don't have control of who's going to be in there yet, but I keep going back to traffic, okay? If things work as they are here, are you willing to eliminate, and is it able to here, hours off that a trucker can't come out of that development? So that the rush hour can move on in the town?
I personally can't commit to that, to that request. There really would have to be coordination with the tenant in that building. The trucks
for most of today's tenants tend to be a little bit more off-peak hour. They don't want to be sitting in rush hour traffic as much as any of us do. So the majority of the trucks do tend to actually occur during off-peak hours.
Yeah, there was 90, 99, and 96.
That's the total number of trips in the peak
Yeah,
hour.
AM was 96 and 99 PM. So I guess what I have to ask is what is AM and PM?
The peak hours are the heaviest consecutive 4 15-minute intervals. So when we count during the morning and during the afternoon, we count from 7 to 9 a.m. and from 4 to 6, and then from 4 to 6 p.m. We find the heaviest hour between 7 and 9 and the heaviest hour between 4 and 6 could occur from 7:30 to 8:30, could occur from 7:15 to 8:15, could occur from 4:15 to 5:15. We then apply all the traffic on top of those 2 heaviest hours to get the 2 worst hours of the day.
And John, that count would include employee cars, right? That's not just trucks that you're talking about?
Yes, the 96 trips in the morning, 99 trips in the afternoon, that is passenger cars plus trucks. That's correct. From page 6 of our traffic study.
Any further questions from any of the board members? You have any?
Yeah.
Some stuff to go over?
Let's see, the restricted right turn exiting the site to be left-hand only by trucks. That'll also be imposed on the Lot 2 Berry Plastics tenant or occupants? How do you discern which truck is from which site?
That wasn't part of the, we didn't discuss those specifics in terms of any trucks from that, from accessing the driveway. Right now, that existing building is operating certainly well below full occupancy. But I can discuss that with the applicant in terms of restriction of all trucks versus the proposed.
I guess it's just one more indication of, I think our thoughts is that the Lot 2 is being significantly impacted by or affected by this proposal to be common in access and egress, as well as other things like sanitary sewer flow and stormwater management. So I think we really need the applicant to commit to a Lot 2 discussion, whether it's an amended site plan or however we get that addressed.
Well, we did agree to come in for an amended site plan on the Berry site.
Great. So that would be covered under that
And then, so
discussion.
that would be resolved by the time we came back for final,
Right.
we get an approval here, the Berry amended site plan would have happened.
Okay, thank you. Is it your testimony that the traffic impact study that was furnished now as a result of the proposed common driveway, the numbers are different now, but the conclusions would be the same? Or you're committing to offer a new traffic impact study, but what can the board rely on tonight is what I'm asking.
Well, in your letter, you asked for testimony. And what we did was we went back and specifically looked at the combination of the full occupancy of Berry Plastics and the proposed building here, and determined that the driveway, the now combined driveway, operates at acceptable levels of service. That will then
My question, I guess, would be, what is an acceptable level of service, and what was it in the prior study? Are they the same?
Yes, they're C or better. So, yes.
C or better.
That is
And
correct.
can you help the board understand what a C means?
Sure.
compared
So, this is many projects that I testify on, kind of use this analogy, but in the traffic engineering world, levels of service are graded, intersections are graded by, letter grades, A, B, C, D, E, and F, much like in school. In urban areas, level service D is deemed acceptable. In some rural areas, level service C is deemed acceptable. It really is a quick letter grade that is that is derived by the average delay of vehicles that experience delays at a particular intersection. So level service, certainly A being the best, F being the worst. This drive will operate level. It's actually level service B in the morning and level service C in the afternoon.
which is what our updated analysis shows.
And do you know, based on the 2019 counts, what that driveway intersection was rated at? In other words, was it better than, or is it being diminished now as a result of the additional traffic?
You give me a minute. The previous proposed isolated driveway, I'll call it, was operating level service B in the previous traffic study. Now combining the two, so Berry Plastics is operating at B, the proposed driveway is operating at B. Now the combination of those two driveways, the AM remains a B, the PM is a level service.
Okay, so and the PM is diminished, but it's still acceptable level.
That is correct, and that's for the exiting, obviously the exiting aspect of.
That was my question. Does that also assess the through traffic on Stryker?
Right, those are A's. Those do not experience delays because they have the right of way. It's the exiting portions of the driveway that then have to look for that gap in traffic to enter onto Stryker's Road.
Okay. And is it your testimony that the site as designed with the single point of access is a safe arrangement?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then with respect to the other comments that Mr. McKenna addressed, or the bank parking with the dead end aisle, I don't know if you were privy to that. I think we kind of bypassed that, or it was agreed last time that it would be evaluated. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I think we kind of deferred that to the traffic engineer, since you weren't here.
Well, I was here during Mr. McKenna's testimony. I can't recall what his testimony was.
I think they're going to look at other options, perhaps to eliminate the dead end in the one bay. If they had the bank parking, the resultant was a one long dead end parking bay.
I can discuss that with Mr. McKenna, and we can work with your office on that one.
Okay. All right, those extend my questions.
George, well,
thank you.
I guess I have only one question that's sort of bothered me a little bit on this whole discussion, and I guess just the sense of getting the magnitude. On Stryker's Road at the peak hour, either AM or PM, we have the combined driveway now, Barry, and of course your project. About 150 feet away, we're going to have basically Banks is going to be, Bridge is going to be about 150 feet away for its entrance, and directly across the street is going to be the asphalt plant. Just for the sense of magnitude, how many cars between those three uses is going to end up at that intersection at the peak hour between those three driveways and trying to make various turning moves? I guess I'm always trying to figure out just how congested those 3 points are going to be, even though any one point may be working. You have 3 of them there occurring at the same time. And I guess I'm trying to figure out how many cars and trucks are going to be trying to get into one of those 3 driveways at the peak hour. Because they're only, I understand they're 150 feet, but that isn't much when you think of a truck as being 65, 70 feet long.
In future conditions, with existing traffic, with bridge development, with the proposed development, with the now constructed warehouse to the south, approximately 500 vehicles in both northbound and southbound direction. What I will say is that for the bridge development, and actually for this development as well, but for the bridge development, the majority of their traffic actually, and when I say the majority, about 20, I reviewed their traffic study that they had submitted to the town. The majority of their traffic is back and forth to 519. So they're in and they're out to the south. They actually don't interface with our proposed driveway. Only about 25% of their traffic interfaces with our combined driveway at Berry Plastics. But and then certainly the majority of our traffic, again, approximately 75% is heading down toward 519. Which is why when we had incorporated the bridge development project into our traffic analysis, really the result was what we expected. Still some level of service concerns at 519 and Strikers Road, garnering the need for a traffic signal there, which is what the county identified 2, maybe 3 years ago even, which was the result of resulted in the contribution by another developer.
Okay, so I guess what you're saying then is in that section of highway at peak hour, we might have technically 500 vehicles. Do I understand that? You're trying to get through that point on the road? Do I understand your testimony right there?
Yeah, if you took a look at, if you added, all northbound traffic along Strikers Road and all southbound traffic along Strikers Road is approximately 500 in each direction when all the buildings are built. Now, the majority of those are through movements that aren't performing turning movements at these driveways.
Okay. Well, I guess the question I have is it such then that Strikers Road should have a bypass lane for some of this traffic so they don't get caught in the stack ups of making these turns?
Well, it's about a 38 to 40 foot width along Strikers Road. I think it was mentioned before, 36, roughly between 36 and 40 feet, depending upon which section of Strikers Road. A left turn vehicle, it makes that in the lane. That technically does allow, depending upon the size of the vehicle, a bypass for other vehicles that don't want to wait behind that left turning vehicle. In the areas that have the 40-foot cartway width, that allows for really, I call it a shoulder bypass. They kind of go around that vehicle making a left turn.
I understand what you're
Right.
saying. So you think there's enough room in there? Okay.
And again, only about 25% of the traffic associated with the site is really coming from the north, because the proximity of this site to 519 and Strikers Road and therefore 22 is really what makes this site desirable, and that's where we see the traffic patterns about 75% heading to and from the south of the site. It's only about 25% of all vehicles accessing this intersection are going to be coming from the north.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, I'll open it to Overlook's attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wisher, unfortunately, I was only retained on Monday on this matter, so I wasn't present when you testified back in May. I have portions of the report based upon what we were able to obtain from the clerk's office. Just so that I understand, in sum, Strikers Road and Uniontown Road, and we're talking about first level of service and then queuing. That's the significant items, correct? Level of service and then queuing.
Yes.
Is it correct that with regard to Strikers Road, Uniontown Road, that the level of service during the weekday afternoon peak is F? It's a failing level of service.
If you could, you obviously have tables from my traffic study. I believe you're probably referencing table 1.1, I believe.
Correct.
Yes. The intersection as a whole operates a level of service B or better in future conditions. There is a movement in the weekday afternoon peak hour. It's the Strikers Road approach to Uniontown that we've seen, based upon our analysis, operate level of service at. That is correct.
I don't want to belabor the points because the board obviously has a very clear understanding of the magnitude of the traffic
And just for purposes of the individuals who are here, highlighting the report, what I'm seeing is that repeatedly with regard to 22 West and Uniontown Road, eastbound 22 Uniontown Road, Strikers Road, Memorial Parkway, presently do not operate in acceptable level of service. Is that accurate?
In certain peak hours for certain movements, which was the genesis of the county desiring a traffic signal, say, for example, at Uniontown and Strikers Road. And I'll just take it one step further, with the installation of a traffic signal at that intersection does operate a level of service, an acceptable level of service.
Now, with regard to the truck traffic, if you eliminate the egress right turn movement so that it will not be going, that traffic won't be going Route 57, the only other option is 519.
That's correct.
And that's the same road that probably the majority of the Overlook residents travel. So would it be fair to say that they're going to experience much more traffic as they're attempting to get to Route 22, east or westbound?
In terms of volume, again, the sheer construction of this building increases the number of trips. What we want to do is address the level of service in the operations. That, again, with coordination with the county, they could not commit to a timetable for the installation of the traffic signal, but the funding is there for a traffic signal, the contribution is there for a traffic signal, the design is underway for a traffic signal, so when that does get implemented, it's going to look different and operate different, i.e. better than existing conditions.
Understand. So just by way of brief summary, it's a very difficult situation presently. The additional traffic is going to make a very difficult situation more difficult. Fair?
Well, I would characterize it as not fair because there will be improvements on the external roadway network that are not seen today. And those improvements, i.e. a traffic signal, for example, improves the level of service.
That's under discussion. You've already agreed to commit to financial resources to that, but there's presently no timetable for when that's going to be completed. Is that accurate?
The applicant for the existing warehouse to the south, they have made their contribution. That the implementation of those funds, the design and the installation of the traffic signal is now in the county's control. And I think that when this applicant goes through the same county process, you're going to find that to be the same case. If a contribution was required by the county, that contribution is now under the control of the county. Earmarked, but under the control of the county.
So my point is there's no timetable. In other words, you can't say it's going to be reviewed 6 months, a year, 2 years, correct?
My current conversations with the county do not provide any kind of timetable.
So would it be the applicant's position then that, given how significant the traffic issue is, that really there could be no approval with regard to this project until that is resolved, one way or the other?
It's a third-party approval, through a third-party entity with the county. I'll defer to Mr. Peck.
Yeah, Mr. Wishner, if I may. Council, you're undoubtedly familiar with the case of Dunkin' Donuts versus Township of North Brunswick. Tell me if you're familiar with this holding or not. The planning board has no authority to deny a site plan because of its anticipated detrimental impact on off-track traffic conditions. Planning for traffic patterns is an exercise of the zoning power vested in the governing body. The planning board may go no further than to condition approval on 1, improvements to on-track entrances and exits, and 2, contributions to off-track improvements made necessary by the on-track development. And that case has been affirmed by the appellate division, et cetera. It's the guiding light on this subject in New Jersey, correct?
It is a decided case. There's also case law that provides that at the time of the application, the applicant's required to present before the board all evidence necessary for the board to decide, in light of any statutory provisions, ordinance, or any other requirements, the right to relief being sought. There's variance relief as a part of this application. It's not a bill as a matter of right. With regard to the building, there's a variance that's required because of parking as an element of the size of the building, based upon the fact that Penn-Starry Dom versus Morrow, Supreme Court case, Toll Brothers versus Burlington County Board of Chosen Freeholders. The applicant is required to present all necessary proofs to permit the board to make a decision.
There's no argument.
With regard to all relief being sought.
2 hardship variances and a buffer variance.
There's variance relief. We both know that. So from that standpoint, I just want to get the facts here.
Understood.
So just briefly to review, there's no specific time frame for the county to make that determination with regard to the signalization of the Strikers Road and Uniontown Road. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Gentlemen, I think we're getting into points of law that are way beyond what this board is going to be going with, so.
Yeah, try to keep the
If
fact
I
oriented.
understand, I'm trying to give you as much latitude as I can, but you're losing us with, you know.
Well, that's why I want to keep it focused on the traffic and the level of service. That's why I like points for level of service. And, with respect to the queuing, there's a comment in the report that the queue links will not extend into adjacent intersections or disrupt internal operations of the proposed development. But then it notes at a majority of the study intersections. So what intersections are involved where it was determined that queuing will disrupt internal operations?
Not specific to internal operations, at the intersection of 519 and Strikers Road, the left turn lane from Route 519 onto Strikers Road, under an unsignalized condition, the queue appears to exceed the storage area. Now, that does get solved or can be solved with proper timings, under a signalized condition. We call it advance, left turn advance phase or the green arrow, to clear that queue out. Again, those timings are under purview or really under the design of the county.
Would it be accurate then with regard to your testimony that until such time as the county takes action, that what you just described is a disruption for internal operations at that intersection?
At the intersection of 519 and Strikers?
Road.
Yes.
And does that present a health, safety, or welfare issue that the governing body, the mayor, or other members of the township would be legitimately concerned about?
I think that, again, what we've seen is the county is controlling the design and installation of that traffic signal. The traffic study, which is based upon 2019 volumes, which will now be updated to present to the board engineer, can show that there are different traffic patterns that are occurring today than there were back in 2019. And the queue itself doesn't necessarily pose a safety hazard. There's intersections all throughout the township, all throughout the county that have, undesirable queuing. And, really the comparison for mitigation or the comparison for acceptable operations really focuses on level of service.
Has there been any discussion at the county level about, and I think the comment was made by one of the board professionals, an additional lane either on Strikers or potentially on 519? Is that under review or consideration at all?
Not at this time. This applicant still does need to complete the county review and approval process. We have not received indications from the county at this point, based upon previous submissions, that was going to be a request. But again, we're not through the approval process at the county level yet.
I'm just trying to determine in terms of the post-development study, what that would achieve if we're already essentially at so many points that a compromised level of service? Would it just not confirm what we already know and what we can already anticipate?
Well, yeah, I think the language, has been created based upon other applications. That language allows for, an understanding of the tenant. I know on previous applications with the county, they focused on something that we heard here before about, staggering shift times, taking a look at employee counts, running multiple shifts, things like that. That was part of a county approval process for other applications. Again, those conversations to that level have not occurred on this particular application, but I would anticipate a very similar conversation for a very similar size building in a similar location.
Would the applicant commit to that as a part of a condition of any ultimate determination that the board made?
Well, those conversations are occurring with the county. Who has the jurisdiction at that particular intersection. I can't commit to also placing that condition should it arise on the township level as well.
One item with regard to the site, referring to A10, there was added a ring road. And was the purpose of the ring road to permit circulation so it didn't interfere with the unloading and loading that was taking place at the bays?
That was, I think, more of a site plan related request. I may have to defer to Mr. McKenna about the genesis of that comment that came out of the engineer's letter. We've seen ring roads separate passenger cars and trucks. We've seen it provide access all the way around the building for fire suppression and those kind of activities.
So it would be beneficial to have motor vehicles separated from trucks on movements within the site. Is that your testimony?
Well, in some locations, especially by by some of the, you can even see by some of the dock doors, it really is an operational preference by a particular tenant. I know NFI has dozens of tenants, and Mr. Landsberg can probably even substantiate, the number of tenants that they lease to. It is kind of a preference from a tenant perspective. Some have a lot of truck activity, some don't. Some prefer some separation, some don't feel the need for that separation based upon truck numbers and employee numbers.
With regard to the bays, the trucks loading and unloading, there's sufficient space there for the trucks to enter and then also leave.
That is correct, yes.
One of the points that was discussed, Mr. McKenna, was eliminating the movement of the tractor trailers to the rear of the site, enforceable by signage or maybe collapsible ballards. Is that something that can be accomplished here to the extent that the purpose for the tractor trailers loading and unloading can be accomplished without them really transversing the rear portion of the site?
I think Mr. McKenna testified to some treatments in that area. I may have to defer to his testimony because,
Yeah, that's more appropriate for Mr. Landsberg.
One additional item, you mentioned that there were additional counts or studies that were done this year. Has that been codified, memorialized in any reporting? I haven't seen anything.
It's not associated with this particular application. It's associated with the recently constructed warehouse to the south on Strikers Road.
Okay. That may be beneficial to have, to review, and to assess. Is that something that could be made available?
I think it's good anecdotal information. There was a question by the board engineer about wanting to see some additional information, and I think certainly, my testimony talks about comparisons of 2022 counts versus 2019 counts, and I can substantiate that testimony with that information.
With that very information?
That's correct.
That we don't have?
That's correct.
Which I've committed to submitting.
Have you completed?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Donna?
Donna Schneider, 26 Meadowview. Gary, are we going to have public comment at the end of the meeting, like general public comment, or are you stopping the meeting after the testimony?
You will have, well, unless he has additional
Okay.
witnesses to come on, you'll be able to question the witnesses, but at the end, we'll have a public.
I mean, to ask questions to the board, or can I ask our attorney a question right now before I ask my questions?
What?
Or I don't know how you are working it, if I can ask those questions.
Basically, you have the opportunity to ask him questions now,
Okay.
and then we'll
Okay.
revisit.
Okay, I just want to make sure I have an opportunity later to question. Okay, thank you. Okay. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. You had said that you guys reduced the amount of driveways from 3 to 2. Your original proposal for your original driveway, were you okay with the traffic coming in and out of your original driveway?
It operated at an acceptable level of service. The conflict points in my mind didn't cause a concern. You know, from a planning principle, you want to try to achieve reduced conflict points, which this new plan does. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the previous plan had unsafe conditions. This is a preferred plan.
Okay, what happened to the original plan?
What happened to it?
How come you, because you had to go through a couple of different ways to try and get into the property. The first one was having an agreement with Bridge, is that correct?
This is sort of beyond Mr. Witchner's testimony.
Okay, he was testifying earlier that you went from 3 to 2, so I'm asking the questions about the 3 to 2.
Right, you're asking about like the contracts with that. Just for the record, it was an agreement with the owners of Lot 6. I don't believe it was with Bridge.
Okay, and so that's what I'm asking, what happened to that original?
No, we heard the testimony, we heard the questions from the board, we have ears, and we saw that the board was not enamored with
Well,
running.
I'm sorry, wait, hold on, Mr. Peck. A lot of these people were not here over a year ago when this testimony happened,
Mr. Witcher's
so.
not the appropriate party though to answer.
Okay, but he did testify earlier that there were 3 driveways and went to 2, and this was an easier way, and
Right.
so if he knows all of that, he can answer the question of what happened to the original proposal?
What I can say is that at a previous meeting, the board had asked us to coordinate with an adjacent property owner, and to come back and report those results or those conversations.
Because they weren't going to approve the original.
I don't know the mindset of what would happen if. We were asked to take a look at combining accesses with adjacent property owners.
Okay, so you're not really reducing it, you just weren't going to be able to get approved for the first one, so that's why you had to go to Berry you didn't reduce it, you just had no other option but to go with Berry Plastics to have access to that.
All I know is that we were asked to investigate shared access. I don't know what would have happened if we were unsuccessful.
Okay. Have you contacted fire and ambulance about your one-way in and one-way out access to the property?
I have not. The site plan was submitted to the town, and I may have to defer to the superintendent whether that was reviewed by emergency services.
Okay. You know, so the original one, you were fine with the traffic and everything. Then you have, you're okay with how you have it now. And as others said, you're not allowing the right-hand turns out, or however you're doing it, right-hand turns, correct, lefts? Yeah, the left-hand turns, right.
The right turn egress movements are being restricted at the request of the town.
Right, and I can,
For trucks.
for trucks,
Yes.
exactly. So right now, we have one warehouse on Strikers Road, and I could probably tell you, a lot of those trucks do not adhere to that. They make rights and lefts whenever they're not supposed to, signage and everything. So you have to take into account some of those things in your study. Are you just looking at a perfect world on paper, or are you looking at real-life issues as well?
Well, we want to design the driveway to enforce as best we can, whether it's through design, whether it's through signage, whether it's through lease agreements, all different tools in the toolbox to enforce that restriction. And, with the commitments on the plan, enforceable by the township as well.
Okay, and just the traffic signal that you're saying the county wants to put there, you're saying that that's going to fix things, it's going to improve it and everything else, but that traffic signal doesn't seem to be a be-all, fix-all for that intersection, because those trucks are too wide and they're going into the turn lane for the cars that are there. So if you put a light there, those cars have to stop at that light. There's nowhere for them to go, and they've got these trucks that are coming out, and you're trying to get in, and they're going to wind up hitting you because there's a signal there and you can't move, just like as it is on 57. When trucks are coming in and you're stopped at that light, their turn is too wide, and there's cars stopped right there because there's nowhere else for them to go, and then the whole line has to try and back up to get that truck out of there. So I'm just saying a traffic signal, to me, is not the be-all, end-all to fix this problem, and especially when you can't even tell us if there actually will be a traffic signal, because it seems to be, as you were just speaking of, there's no real timeline. This could be 10 years from now. Even though there's funds there, it doesn't mean it's really going to happen. There's funds for a lot of things that never come to pass. So it just doesn't seem to be.
Is there a question there?
Yeah, I'm saying you're, how could you say, I mean, are you going to say that that traffic signal is definitely going to improve the rating and the, whatever you want to call it, the,
Level of service.
yeah, level of service, sorry.
Our analysis shows a significant improvement in the level of service at that intersection with the signalized intersection, with the signalization treatment.
And how did you come to, how do you know that?
We're bound to use the highway capacity manual, which is a series of calculations with modeling software, all of which is submitted as part of the traffic impact study and submitted to the town engineer. And then we compare really an apples-to-apples comparison without a traffic signal and with a traffic signal, and we compare those levels of service, which ultimately are really a result of the average delay per vehicle. And those levels of service are improved.
So it's pretty much based off a software program.
It's based upon, me as a licensed professional engineer utilizing the tools available and required of me over the last 25 years of my practice.
Okay, thank you.
All right, at this point, I think we're going to take a 10-minute break. See people coming in and out, so we'll reconvene in 10 minutes. I'm sorry, did you have a question for that witness?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's okay.
sure.
Judy Liptak, 47 Kyle Drive. Hi.
Hi.
Excuse my ignorance again, because I'm new at this. Your testimony tonight as an expert witness, you're hired by NFI or the attorneys that work for NFI. You're not an independent study, but you work for the attorneys and NFI.
I've been hired by the applicant to provide a traffic study in accordance with the township ordinance and county regulations.
Okay, noted, so not independent, you work for them, gotcha. So I ask, we hear the testimony about the trucks and the location, the gross overstep in being so close to building such a high industrial building to overlook. So what, I heard you say, but I couldn't hear you clearly, about the site being desirable. What makes the site desirable?
From a transportation perspective, access to local highways. So proximity to 22 is certainly desirable, the desirable feature of this particular property.
Is it access to 22 so desirable when the traffic and the trucks having to sit in this line of traffic continuously, that's desirable to them? The truck drivers?
I don't perform the market studies for potential tenants coming to the site. Typically, the sheer proximity to highway access is typically desirable by tenants.
Oh, I guess my understanding would be like right on the highway, like 78, not within a town. So I guess I misunderstood what access would be. So that would be an interesting study to do, or a presentation, would be that market study, because we're making a lot of decisions based on...
Are you making a statement here?
No, I have a question.
Or are you going to question him on actual traffic on the site?
Right, on the site and the traffic studies that we've been talking about, the intersections. I can't ask those questions. Everyone else seems to be asking those questions.
It's not this board's prerogative to have off-site traffic. So you can talk about that by the DOT. The county has the oversight of the traffic signals going on. We don't have those answers here. So
I thought he did, because he was talking about those intersections and a light
they can
being
give us the level
put there.
of services on those intersections, but we have no control over the county of what they're going to do and when they're going to do it and how it's going to affect traffic.
So I was trying to understand the legalese that was transpiring between the two about the contribution and the traffic light, I'm asking him if that's what he believes is going to solve that traffic problem. Is that a legitimate question?
Ask him if it's going to solve the problem.
Is that going to solve the traffic problem?
My analysis shows that the intersection of 519 and Strikers Road operates at better levels of service and acceptable levels of service as compared under a signalized condition as compared to an unsignalized condition.
And that was the May 2019 study?
That is correct.
Okay. And that is I hope I can ask this question. Is that a study that is based on a formula and not any current tenant?
It's based upon trip generation published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers for similar sized buildings across the country and approximately 60 to 70 data points of existing buildings throughout the country of similar tenants that are
We don't have a tenant.
Similar tenants to the tenant pool that NFI is looking to attract.
Would we agree that a postal tenant is going to generate a lot more traffic than another tenant? Like that would be a high traffic, like the one that's already there?
As I testified to before, we did a post-development study on that USPS building on Strikers Road, and it was very similar to the data that was published by ITE.
So that was a study for that company though, and that postal?
That's correct.
Okay, but not for this current one, right?
That study was performed due to a requirement imposed by the town on that particular applicant during the approval process 2 years ago.
2 years ago. And that's what you were talking about, adding that testimony to your report, like those numbers, so everyone has access to those, that additional information, data?
Yeah, if as long as it's not proprietary information to that particular tenant, I can provide that. I can provide traffic counts specific to the intersection of 519 and Strikers Road, that's not proprietary information.
So when you say restricted access to 57, what does restricted mean? Define restricted.
The restrictions that I was discussing was to prevent right turn truck movements out of the driveway toward 57.
Restricted meaning you can't do it. There's
That's-
not once in a while, and we don't know how we're going to differentiate between Barry and NFI trucks.
I think Mr. Peck talked about I believe it was an amended site plan for Berry Plastics.
Oh, that's right.
To look at that, but it's not the intention is to be a 24-hour restriction on trucks making a right turn egress movement.
And how are we making sure that happens? Or
So-
doesn't happen?
So there are a number of tools in the toolbox. There's signage, there's certain restrictive radii, there are lease agreements, and there's enforcement.
So all of these, like the post study that's going to happen and these restrictions, the tenant would know ahead of time. So if they don't follow them, it would be the owners of the property that would have to make sure that they're implemented.
I think it would be on the applicant to discuss those restrictions during lease negotiations with a particular tenant.
So because you often talk about the one on the southern warehouse that's there. And you said you're going to use signage as the way to prevent it from happening. There's signage there now, and it's not preventing it. So what is the additional plan? Because signage isn't working. It's not working now. Like just the other day, I have video of a truck trying to make the turn he's not supposed to, and he's stopped and reading all the signs that he has to try to figure out. Meanwhile, cars are illegally going around him, and it's just a hazard. So what's Plan B?
Well, I have not been involved with lease negotiations on that particular tenant. Yeah, I personally don't control those. What I do is I make recommendations on what tools can be utilized from design as well as parameters in a lease for those restrictions. What's happening with that tenant, I don't particularly know the specifics in terms of those relationships between the tenant and the owner.
So you said signs, and what was the other you said? Radius, turning radius?
You could create a tighter turning radius to discourage trucks making a right turn egress movement. That is another, that's another tool that could be implemented.
And you already have a tight space, so you'd still be able to do that.
Well, I don't think it's tight. I mean, it's a 40-foot wide driveway.
I don't know anything about that, but it seems kind of tight.
I think it's absolutely appropriately designed. The width of that, yes.
Outdated. So that, we talked about, you have not had approval from emergency services yet. I don't know that you need approval, but their input for fire
Getting way
and rescue.
far away from what this gentleman.
And we can, actually, yeah, that's not for Mr. Witchner, but before we leave tonight, Mr. McKenna, just one quick thing, he can testify to that.
Okay, well, we're talking about one way in, one way out. I thought that was his preview,
Oh,
right?
you asked about emergency services review.
Right, because of the one way in, one way out.
Well, I'm going to say, Mr. McKenna is going to testify about his interaction with the fire department.
Okay, I was gonna add in active shooters too, like how do we make sure we can get in and save people? Since that's a problem these days. I wouldn't just say fire, I would say more than fire. And I think that is all. Oh, yes, one more thing. We talk about traffic and on our property and backing up perhaps. We talk about noise pollution and light pollution, but we don't talk about air pollution. When you do traffic studies on your property, do you address that? Are there regulations or is that just an under-regulated area?
It doesn't fall within the purview of a traffic impact study under the township's ordinance.
So how much, like idling and pollution that's put out isn't part of a traffic study? What is that part of?
I don't
No
know.
study? We don't care about the environment. Is there a study there?
Well, there's an 85 law, I mean, that we have.
I asked him, he said there isn't. I just wondered if there was a study.
It's not part of the traffic study, is what he said.
Right, and then I just asked maybe if you knew what study would do that. You don't know?
I don't know, that's not my area of expertise.
Okay, that's all, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I'm closing the public portion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to recall Mr. McKenna, just to briefly testify on that question that was just raised.
You, how many more?
After Mr. McKenna, we have our planner.
Okay. And that will be the conclusion of your presentation?
That's our plan.
Okay. Hope we can get through this quickly. Yeah. Approaching our magic hour, so.
Oh, I'm well aware, Chair. He was previously sworn last month.
You're still under oath.
Kyle, you've heard some questions asked about whether emergency services or the fire department have had the opportunity to review the site plan. To your knowledge, have they?
Yes, they have, and I think I did previously testify to the fact that I did meet with the fire chief, Kevin McGuire, and the board. We did review site circulation, access, the proposed striping, signage, and they were comfortable with the circulation proposed. We also discussed water, utilities, and other components of the design. There was no concern with the access as proposed, or aisle width, circulation, et cetera. We did do a simulation of the emergency vehicle circulation for the site, for the fire truck, and tractor trailers as well, which will facilitate two-way access throughout the site. So that's all I wanted to do.
Yep. We just want to get that.
That was testified to last.
I believe it was.
Meeting we had, yes.
I believe it was.
Is there any record of that meeting?
It was a Microsoft Teams meeting, but I suspect there will be a letter.
Do you know the date when that occurred, or?
It was prior to the previous hearing in May, so likely first or second week of May. I could provide documentation on that, and yeah, I'd expect a letter would be circulated to memorialize that.
Any questions,
Well, I think
on this?
you testified at the meeting, and then all the questions that were asked from the public were asked at that point, so.
Good. Okay, well,
Would you like to?
let's call our next witness, Barbara Elan, our planner.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Barbara Allen. Last name is Ehlen. I'm going to go through my qualifications if that's okay. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey and an AICP. I've worked with Beacon Planning since 2008, and I've worked my way up from up to project manager. And I've been accepted as an expert in planning throughout the state of New Jersey, including in like Washington, Franklin, Cranford, Red Bank, all throughout.
Have you been sworn before this board before?
No.
Okay, we should do that.
Ms. Allen, raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you'll give here this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So,
Mr. Chairman, is Ms. Allen accepted as an expert in the
Yes.
planning?
Her congratulations are acceptable.
thank you. So, just as a review, the subject property is situated within the community's ROM, or ROM, Research Office and Manufacturing Zone, which permits warehouse and distribution centers as of right. So when we look at as of right uses, that means that the Township Council has looked at this particular use and found it acceptable for this area of the community. That means it has anticipated impacts such as traffic, noise, and trash. That has found that this area can accommodate those associated, let's say, impacts with this use. In connection with the zone and the uses permitted therein, the township has determined that the appropriate zoning standards include a minimum side yard setback of 50 feet and a minimum rear yard setback of 80 feet and a height of 4 stories and 60 feet. And in order to screen uses permitted in the ROM district, the ordinance states under section 243-75D2, buffer strip. A landscaped buffer strip shall be established and maintained along all lot lines, other than street lot lines, created within a development in this zone. Such buffer strips shall be a minimum of 25 feet in width and shall meet the requirements prescribed in section 243-62. Therefore, the Township Council has determined that it is appropriate to situate a 4-story, 60-foot building at a setback of 50 feet with a buffer of 25 feet wide. So that is what is permitted as of right in this zone, but that is not what is being presented this evening. The application this evening seeks to construct a 563,950 square foot structure containing about approximately 17,500 square feet of office, and the balance being warehouse space. The area of the building is below the permitted FAR of the district. Therefore, there is no issue with respect to intensity, as we are permitted use abiding to the size limitations established by your ordinance. The site will contain 162 trailer parking stalls and 356 vehicle parking spaces with an additional 178 banked parking stalls. The area for the bank stalls will remain as green space until such time, if ever, is needed. The building will be centrally located with trailer loading and parking located to the north and south, and vehicle parking to the east and west. As was testified to, site access will be provided through the adjoining lot via shared ingress-egress drive, and thereby using an existing curb cut along Stryker Road. In response to concerns raised by the board and the community, the applicant has provided a buffer that is 440% larger than required by ordinance. So 25 feet is required per the Township Council and the standards adopted therein, and at least 110 feet is being proposed. This buffer will have a berm, a landscaping, and now along a portion of it, a sound wall. The applicant is also proposing a ring road along the parcel's northern perimeter. The parcel itself is irregularly shaped with a large notch at its southwest corner and is landlocked. The site is located within a commercial corridor of the township, as evidenced by the existing development and the recently approved warehouse on the adjoining lot, the bridge site. The application this evening seeks the following variances and waivers. From section 243.63D, primary structures shall be built only upon lots having frontage upon a street improved to meet township requirements, and section 243.75E, minimum lot frontage of 300 feet required. This is a landlocked parcel without frontage along an approved roadway, and this is not a condition that can be cured as the surrounding lots are improved. The other variance requested is from section 243-75D2. A 25-foot wide buffer strip is required along all lot lines other than street lines. So the applicant is requesting to intrude into the buffer along the northern property line, which actually abuts train tracks. The train tracks themselves also maintain actually wooded areas along both sides, and beyond the train tracks is a roadway. So there is additional buffering there. Though not on site, it does act to meet the intent of the ordinance. The other intrusions were also noted at the proposed drive crossover on Lot 2 in an area where an easement is proposed on Lot 6. Waivers are requested from section 243-46C1B, wherein driveway aprons are permitted a maximum width of 40 feet, wherein 143.7 feet is proposed. Section 243-48B6A and B, wherein fire aisle shall be 30 feet in width adjacent to all exposures of the building, wherein 24 feet in width is proposed, as well as vehicle parking adjoining the structure. And the final waiver was section 243-46E2C regarding pipe velocity. My colleague, Andrew Janyu, previously reviewed the township's master plan and subsequent re-examination reports, which promoted industrial growth. As a recap of the most recent reports, the 2012 re-examination report noted on page 2, as a result of these new initiatives by the state and township, the planning board has re-examined the township master plan and developed regulations to determine the specific changes necessary to align the master plan and development regulations with the township's objectives for growing the industrial zone lands located south of the Norfolk Southern Railroad. It is the intent of this report to identify the specific revisions needed to bring the township master plan and development regulations current with the need to guide future land use within the Lopatcong Township's research office and manufacturing zone located south of the Norfolk Southern Railroad. Additionally, the Highlands Center Planning Study Report, prepared by your planning professionals, dated December 7th, 2017, and revised through June 13th, 2018, states on page 12, non-residential districts. With regard to the ROM zone, the analysis includes all known existing commercial, industrial, and manufacturing businesses located in all three district areas, north, west, and south. Only the south ROM zone is located within the center. Of the 44 parcels located within the ROM zone, township-wide, half, 22, are developed with either a commercial or industrial manufacturing use. On page 8, it says, generally speaking, the center has excellent access to and through all of its area. The primary movement of vehicle through the Lopatcong Highlands Center is via major state arterial thoroughfares, U.S. Highway 22 and New Jersey State Highway Route 57. Continuing on, improvements to Route 22 that include additional signalization and turning lanes will improve access to the proposed warehouse development in Lopatcong and the adjoining Phillipsburg redevelopment area. And as recently as 2015, Lopatcong's professionals were discussing the area's ability to accommodate the ROM district, and in fact, of work that was being performed to specifically enhance warehouse development within the ROM district south of Route 57. The report was specifically tasked with examining all districts within the center and to identify any issues that would benefit from land use amendments. The report concluded on page 9, many of the zoning districts located within Lopatcong Highlands Center function as expected in accordance with the township's zoning and land use ordinance without Highlands RMP conflicts. For such zones, no revisions to the regulated uses or area or bulk standards are necessary. So these types of uses in this specific area have been reviewed as recently as 2018 and found to be appropriate for this area. Given the acknowledgement of the characteristics of the ROM district within the center and the recognition that the developed portions of the district are commercial or industrial in character with new warehousing under construction, it is my opinion that this application is not only consistent with the master plan, but that your community planners emphasize that the site is particularly suited for warehouse development. We can also look to reasons under the municipal land use law. I would opine that the application fulfills G, to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses, and open space, both public and private, according to their respective environmental requirements in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. K, to encourage plan unit developments, which incorporate the best features of design and relate the type and design of the layout to residential, commercial, industrial, and recreational development of the particular site. And M, to encourage coordination of the various public and private procedures and activities shaping land development with a view of lessening the cost of such development to the more efficient use of land. And when I speak to more efficient use of land, I am discussing specifically the shared driveway with the Berry Plastic site. Now, on to the variances. As I'm sure the board is familiar with, there are two types of bulk variances. C1 would be considered our hardship, and C2 would be considered our balance test. The C1 criteria is the appropriate one by which to judge the lot frontage and the frontage upon approved roadway as the parcel is landlocked. The applicant has successfully provided means of ingress and egress to the adjoining parcel. And as there's no available land which to configure this deficiency, the proposal represents the best alternative. This is the type of situation where that the C1 criteria was specifically created to meet. The C2 criteria is the appropriate one by which to review the intrusions into the setback. With respect to the 25-foot wide buffer, as I testified to before, the intrusion is via the ring road, and the intrusion is to a buffer that is buffering another non-residential use. It's train tracks. The intrusion will be a maximum of 15 feet, but will not be across the entire lot line. So as I said, buffers are typically provided as a means of screening a use from an adjoining use. In this instance, the uses are a rail line and a roadway that are to the north, each with their own existing vegetation. Since these are pretty much established uses, that vegetation will most likely remain. The proposal is also a better zoning alternative to what would be required. If required, the applicant could thin and lengthen the building, which would bring that ring road in, but it would intrude into that 110-foot buffer. So by permitting the intrusion against a rail line, we are preserving the larger buffer to the residential uses. The other intrusions consist of the driveway crossover to Lot 2 and an easement at Lot 6. Obviously, the one to Lot 2 is required in order to provide access, and the Lot 6 intrusion, that parcel is also being redeveloped with a warehouse. With respect to substantial detriments, I don't see any. The use is permitted within the district, and the applicant has more than met the setbacks associated with the structure and parking areas. They have also quite exceeded buffering requirements. The only variances requested are to adjoining parcels that are also commercial and industrial in nature.
Barbara, very, very briefly, could you go through the elements of a C2 variance and how the applicant satisfies those elements?
So under the C2, the burdens of proof of the positive criteria, the application relates to a specific piece of property. In this instance, it is a landlocked property that is irregularly shaped. The purposes of the municipal land use law would be advanced by a deviation from the zoning ordinance requirements. As I previously discussed, the municipal, I would opine that it fulfills letter G to provide sufficient space. As discussed, the use is permitted within the district to encourage plan unit developments which incorporate the best features of design, like type and design of layout. So they have placed the warehouse within the center portion, and they have increased the buffer to the eastern residential uses, and to encourage coordination of the various public and private procedures and activities shaping land development with a view of lessening the cost of such development into the more efficient use of land. So in this instance, they have reduced the number of driveways from 3 to 2 in that immediate area and the shared access. And that the benefits of the deviation would outweigh any detriment. When we look at the buffer, just as I said, in order to keep that buffer intact, we're asking for the ring road to intrude into the buffer for the northern. If prompted, the applicant could elongate that warehouse and kind of bring that ring road in, but that would intrude into the buffer to the east. And as I mentioned before, the warehouse is below the permitted floor area ratio of the zone. The variance with respect to the negative criteria, the applicant must demonstrate the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. In this instance, the public good is furthered by the provision of the variance. It presents a better zoning alternative. And the variance will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. As I stated, buffering is usually to protect one use from another. In this instance, we're not intruding into another use that is, per se, like a residential or something more sensitive. It's a railroad line. Moving on.
Looking for some waivers?
Yes. So pursuant to Cox, our Bible, section 23-8B, the Garofalo court noted that a waiver is not more than an acknowledgement by the board that the condition of the property is satisfactory and meets the requirements of the local ordinance. Waivers must be reasonable under the facts. The applicant is seeking the following waivers. From driveway apron, where a maximum width of 40 feet is permitted, wherein 143.7 feet is proposed. As was testified by the applicant's site engineer, the proposed driveway apron presents a safer configuration to allow for truck movements in and out of the site. Fire aisles, as was just testified to, have been reviewed by the fire chief, and the layout was found to be satisfactory. And finally, regarding pipe velocity, I'm not going to lie, I'm not an expert in pipe velocity, but it's my understanding that it is not uncommon and would be sufficient to service the site.
So is it your testimony that granting the relief as proposed will not have a negative impact upon the surrounding uses?
Yes.
Is this site particularly well suited for the proposed use?
Yes, as it is anticipated within the ordinance and the use is permitted as of right.
And it's your testimony that the proposed improvements would meet the criteria for variance relief?
Yes.
Very good. I have nothing further for Ms. Allen.
Question?
Just one question you can clarify for us is the Lot 2, I guess currently it's not under common ownership with Lot 3.01, but if it was, is that an opportunity to remedy the variance relief, C1 variance relief you're looking for to achieve frontage and consolidate those lots?
Yeah, that's highly speculative because there's no proposal to merge those lots.
That's not a requirement to be addressed or considered when two lots are in common ownership and there's variance relief being sought?
They're not under common ownership.
But they will be, right?
No.
No. Okay, can you clarify who the ownership will be?
I think two separate LLCs.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Would you please point out the apron?
Yeah, I believe it's.
Oh, so that is I thought.
The driveway.
Commissioner said that was the 40-foot driveway.
The driveway is 40 foot, but
Up here is 40
where it
feet.
connects with Strikers,
So here's 40 feet and then it expands out to
Oh,
allow those
where-
movements.
Oh, okay.
the big flares to be able to make the turns.
It's kind of like at your driveway where it's pavement and then it's concrete at the end where the apron is.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem that
You
way.
want
It
that
doesn't
to be
seem to scale on the
140 feet.
picture. 40 feet between 140 feet. It doesn't seem to match this. The scale is way off.
Okay.
In my opinion. In terms of the pipe velocity, does that include the proposed, and I don't want to get into different LLCs, because frankly, last meeting, it was on the record that you will own both properties.
Yes, that is what.
That's another question. Perhaps you can move to defer in terms of pipe velocity. Will the pipe velocity be in what was, I believe, the preliminary site, or perhaps the before the preliminary, before this meeting, there was a talk about easement or right of way in terms of, maybe Mr. McKenna, he also offered some talk about this. Will it hook into what will be the very classic sewage line?
I'm going to leave that
Or will the
to.
elevation will it have is it changed from the original? Or what exactly, or did this variance,
This is a waiver.
22, did this waiver exist previously? I think perhaps is my question, because it's not clear to me.
Maybe if I can clarify, it's addressing the pipe velocity in the stormwater pipes. It's not sanitary sewer.
Oh, okay.
And it did exist prior to any of the adjustments.
Okay, I appreciate it.
We're okay with
Thank you.
that. It's a very de minimis change in the requirements.
I appreciate it, thanks.
I appreciate it, thank you.
No further questions from the board. I'll open up to the public.
I do have one question. Somewhere along the line, it was mentioned with Berry Plastics being an amended application. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And yet, it's two separate LLCs that currently own the properties?
Now, right now, the Deschler family owns,
But you just stated that it'll be more than likely two different LLCs.
that's generally how these things work. Yeah.
So I can make an assumption that it may be two different LLCs by the same owners. I can make that assumption. I could be wrong. But if you're talking about an amended application under the current thing, then why? I would think that Berry Plastics would be a whole separate application if it's under two LLCs.
It will be, yeah.
Okay.
The amended site plan for Berry Plastics, that's a separate proceeding from this. That's something that NFI agreed to.
You're agreeing to that condition as which LLC? Like, are you able to speak on behalf of Lot 2? Do you have that validity to speak to that?
Yeah, I believe so.
When you're talking about an amended plan, though, I thought it was amended with NFI.
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
This was not proposed under your original application, though,
Well,
was it?
we might be talking about two different things, Mayor. NFI has amended its application. So we're here tonight on an amended application, but then we're speaking about an entirely separate amended application that would involve the Berry Plastics site, which would be a separate
Again,
proceeding from this.
I don't feel that that's the way it was presented, but it's fine.
Absolutely. It'll be your decision.
Well, we had Mr. Lon's professional testimony for the record or for our perusal at any point. I wasn't privy to her testimony before.
Previously-
Was it provided in writing to us, by any chance?
Was there a?
No, Mr. Janu testified.
Yeah, it was
There's
previous.
transcripts of that.
Yeah, previously my,
This is the first time Barbara's testified.
But that's what I was asking.
I believe there are transcripts available.
We're taking his transcript right now.
Okay, so it's not submitted technically as a letter or as a.
No.
Okay,
Yeah, no, there's not like the engineer submits plans and.
right. So, sorry, I worked for Congress for a little while, so I like to see it in writing.
No further questions from the board. I'll open it up to the public for questions to this witness.
Hello. Donna Schneider, 26 Meadowview. I just wanted to ask, last time there was testimony with Mr. McKenna, the board asked for a letter from the state exempting you from the new stormwater regs. Do you have a letter from the state exempting you from the new stormwater regs?
I believe that's actually outside my purview.
Okay, because you were talking about the pipe velocity.
It was a waiver, it wasn't necessarily discussing
Okay.
going into the stormwater systems.
Because you did ask Gary last meeting about where they had permission to be exempt from stormwater regulations. So you asked for that letter for this time.
I believe you're correct. We had a regulation that the Highlands imposed on us that when they adopted the new stormwater regulations, it was automatic. We didn't have a, previous, they had to conform
That's right.
with the stormwater regulations then on.
Yeah, so, okay, so we don't have a copy, we don't have anything from the state, okay, and that's not in your previous. So
Yeah, that's not, you can put Mr. McKenna on if you want to.
Okay, yeah, okay, and also, do you have an approval from the DEP regarding the sewer?
I do not testify to.
Okay, it's, well,
testifies
it's
to
just
legal
planning, so I'm just, when you're asking for waivers, that's not a part of the waiver, and no sewer is part of any waiver you're asking for that you listed? Okay, so there's none, okay. In your opinion, is there anything else that can go on this lot other than a warehouse?
Well, right now, it's depending on what is permitted within the zone, but a warehouse is permitted as of right.
So
The
any,
application presented.
okay, so in a ROM district though, say a CVS can be permitted there. Could a CVS have access to that road? Would you know if you put a small CVS in there, would you need a waiver to get into that piece of land?
We would need a variance to get into the land because no matter what the use is, it's landlocked.
No matter what the use is?
The parcel's landlocked, so it doesn't have street frontage. So no matter what use would go onto that, it would still need those variances.
Okay, so it's not just a warehouse, it's just anything needs it. Okay, so this is not saying the warehouse is the best fit for it, it's just this is what you're asking to put there, and you're saying it's a hardship because you can't get in there, because it's a
That
landlocked
hardship-
piece.
Yeah, that
Okay.
hardship would apply to anyone who would use the land.
Right, anyone, so this is not the best fit for the, as you testify, this is the,
We don't testify to the highest and best use.
yeah, okay, you were saying that it's the safest, and, you know, it benefits the town and it benefits the area.
I'm not saying that I didn't testify that as to safety. I testified as to the fact that it is permitted within the zone. It's been anticipated by the township council to be permitted here and is complying with the vast majority of standards associated with it.
You didn't say that I'm sorry, because I don't have it in front of me. You didn't say that it was beneficial to the area in your statement?
Well, it's beneficial in that it promotes the goals of the master plan and is in conformance with the majority of zoning standards.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the notice, there was identified pursuant to section 24350B, a parking variance.
So, within the review letter by Ruggiero Plant Land Design, and as was noted, there's different standards that can be used, and the applicant has indicated that the maximum shift work would include 355 employees. And so through his calculations, it is noted that that there is sufficient parking on site, and it's well within industry standards. Let's see.
George, you want
Yeah, just so we're clear here on what we're talking about when it comes to the relief from parking. The applicant originally made a submission to the township that showed that he had the required parking based on a certain employee mix on the site. As a result of discussions with the board, it was his choice, and I think the board agreed, that using our criteria for employees was not something he wanted to do. He did not want to be held to documenting the number of employees on a shift, and he basically made the call that he wanted to be considered a variance based on the square footage of the building, which is 1 space per 800 square feet. So the variance he's requesting tonight is based solely on the square footage of the building. And the variance is triggered because it's too short in that parking. That is the variance. What the applicant's planner is referring to is our office looked up some of the IT parking ratios for warehouses of this type. And in my letter, I indicated that the plan that is being proposed falls within those guidelines, that the number of parking they are providing would be considered adequate for the building of this size and this location. But the variance they're actually seeking is from the 1 per 800 square foot, which is required by the town.
Okay, and again, being late to the party and having just the report that was done on April 18 and the notice, there's office use and warehouse use. Is there a delineation of parking requirements for those two uses?
Yes.
The office uses requires 1 space for every 200 square feet. The warehouse requires 1 space for every 800 square feet.
Okay, and then a reference in the report to 1.5 spaces for each employee.
Well, that deals with we have another section in the code that says that warehousing can be 1 per 800 or 1.5 spaces per each employee. In other words, it's an either or. And the applicant originally chose to go the route of employees, which he complied with. And then in discussions with the board, the basic conclusion was that he did not want to have to be responsible for documenting his employees every year before the board. So he decided to ask for a variance strictly based on the square footage of the building.
Of one space per 800 square feet.
That's correct.
And at the end of the day, there's still a variance required?
There is a variance required, yes. My only point was in my review letter, we, as an office, we looked up these types of warehouses under the ITE standard and just made a comment that the number of cars that they were showing was falling within what would be expected as a reasonable number of spaces for this type of warehouse.
If you utilize the one space per 800 square feet,
We would be
is
required.
the count 807 spaces when you look at the warehouse and office space combined?
Yes, and we're providing,
534?
well, we're providing 447 and 87, and then additional 87 spaces will be banked. So for a total of 534.
So there's a deficiency?
Yes.
With regard to that deficiency, and particularly focusing on the one space per 800 square feet, if the size of the building were reduced, would you then be in compliance with the parking requirement?
Well, we're actually on the floor area ratio. In this instance, the building is being adequately parked, as discussed in the ITE parking generation manual. By the fact that there are even banking spaces, as was requested, and there still should be sufficient parking.
Well, let's break it down into 2 points. With regard to the impervious surface coverage, was that calculated based upon the parking that's being offered, which requires variance relief?
The impervious we're complying with, we're below the standard, and it anticipates the parking that is being provided, and I believe the green bank spaces as well.
If you provided the total number of required spaces, there would be more area necessary and more impervious surface area as a result. Would that be correct? Have you done the calculation to see if you did comply with the parking requirement, what the total impervious would be in relationship to the ordinance requirement?
I did not.
Was there any effort made to, design the building, sized to comply with the parking requirement?
The building meets more than is below actually the floor area ratio. And although there is this the town parking standard, it would probably lead to an over-parking of the structure and unnecessary impervious coverage. So the current configuration is a better alternative.
And I understand in terms of the business decision being made, but
No,
just with
but
respect to,
even the asking of the green bank spaces, I mean, we can construct those right off the bat, but we requested not to. And that permits for additional unimproved space.
understand, but even with the bank spaces, there's still not enough parking to comply with the ordinance
Per
requirement.
the ordinance, but that doesn't mean that that's on the ground, what they're seeing. As per ITE, and it was mentioned, the spaces provided is adequate, and those are based on real data points.
When you do your analysis from a hardship standpoint, C1 variance, would you agree that hardship that is existing on the site because of the depth, shallow, limited access, landlocked, that's all hardship criteria?
Correct.
Alternatively, if there is, as a result of a design plan, a self-created hardship,
Well, no, this.
let me just finish the question.
Go ahead.
If there's a self-created hardship, would that satisfy the C1 criteria?
But we're not qualifying.
I didn't ask you that, I just asked you.
I'm answering your question.
You didn't, with due
Because you're-
respect, you're not. My question to you was this.
What is
If
the
an applicant-
self-created hardship? I'd ask you to clarify.
My question is a self-created hardship recognized to be in compliance with the application of the C1 criteria?
No.
In this instance, You mentioned various waivers and variances, landscaping next to the rail line. If the building were diminished in size, could those variances and/or waivers be avoided?
It could also be avoided if we elongated the building and went into the buffer towards the residential.
But my
So this
question was,
presents a-
could it be avoided if the building were downsized?
We'd have to look at the site plan for that. But in this instance, as I testified to, the building is under what is permitted in its size. And it is situated so as to provide as much buffer to the residential as it can. If we would like to eliminate the ring road, or if we would like to bring the ring road in and elongate the building, then we can intrude into that buffer and fulfill those. That could also eliminate the
That's
variance and waivers.
That's one way to look at it.
Yes.
But there's another way to look at it, and maybe it's not a preferred way on the part of the applicant, because total gross floor area is more leasable space, which is more money. But there's another way to look at it, which is diminishing the size of the building. Is that fair to say?
I would hesitate, because there are all alternatives where they could maintain that square footage, and it would be more of an intrusion. The use is permitted and was anticipated here at a larger size than what is proposed.
And I understand your testimony, that it's a permitted use, so in terms of the application, it's an as-of-right use.
Yes.
But this is not as-of-right build, because there's variance relief required and waivers required.
There's
Is that fair to say?
There are minor variances and waivers requested.
Whether they're minor in some people's perspective or not, to the extent that there's variances and waivers required, it's not a build as of right. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Thank you.
No one else? At that point, we'll close the public portion.
Thank you.
And at that point, we are way beyond our normal closing time, so at this point, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any noes? No abstentions? Meeting's closed.